Hello guys, welcome to my channel. As you can see in the picture today, we will start the story of what if Naruto got Harem Kami and Kyubi part 3. Let's begin. Hinata woke up as she looked across from her, the sleeping form of Naruto, and his peaceful face made her sigh happily as she snuggled up to him as she petted his face, to which he purred, and that seemed to have woken everyone else up, except for Naruto. Ino giggled as she stroked a tail that kept flickering about as Naruto sighed happily and purred further when Ino and the others stroked one of his 9 tails. Kurenai and Anko got up as they decided it was time to make their breakfasts, along with their new residents that Naruto had yet to meet fully. "We're going downstairs to make us all breakfast, anyone else coming?" Kurenai asked as they all nodded and got up, deciding that if any of them stayed with Naruto he would sleep longer and they wanted him to wake up sooner than usual so he could meet his family. The group headed downstairs as they all noticed the Uzumaki family sitting down and eating their breakfast, along with Zabuza who was yelling at the TV. "Sorry, we helped ourselves, I hope you don't mind," Kushina said as the group smiled. "We don't mind at all, we would have helped you mate it if we woke up sooner," Shion said as they were about to continue when there was yet another angry yell coming from the living room. "Stupid channels, why the hell would I want to watch teleshopping in the middle of the freaking afternoon, piss off," Zabuza shouted as he changed the channel to another random channel and cursed as this channel advertised a treadmill. "I don't want to buy your shit, leave me and my TV alone," Zabuza shouted angrily again as a tick appeared above everyone's right eye. Haku was naturally the one to react as she stomped over to him and bopped him at the back of the head. "Will you shut it already, we have guests," Haku said as Zabuza sighed and changed the channel again. This time the channel advertised dieting pills that would probably never work. "That's it, all these programs ever do is advertise to the stupid and the rich," Zabuza shouted as he brought his sword back and was about to cut the TV in half when Haku grabbed the sword from behind and pulled on it, making Zabuza lose his balance and fall on his ass. "If you can remember, this is not your house, you idiot, and I'm sure if you broke the TV, then you'd have an ass whooping," Haku said as Zabuza scoffed a little as he pouted. "I'm going to go see Kakashi, he says that we're going to go on a spying mission with one of the Sannin," Zabuza said as he shunshined away before the others could tell him not to. The Uzumaki group knew of Jireya's reputation for being as did Naruto's mates, as they had at least met him once, and each of those times the old man had been very perverted to them. All who didn't know were Genzi and Haku, who hadn't had the chance to meet the pervert. It was at this moment they heard thumping noises coming from the stairs. The group looked at the figure that emerged from the stairs. Naruto was still very sleepy and he hadn't registered that he had met his family yesterday. Nor had he registered the fact that they were sitting on the other end of the table yet as he went over to his cupped ramen and poured it into a bowl and put a little water into the kettle as he waited for it to boil. The Uzumaki group gasped and their eyes grew wide when they noticed Naruto's 2 fox ears and his 9 fox tails. Hinata smiled as she saw the looks and recognized them as looks of shock, not looks of fear or of hate for what he was. Naruto seemed to nod off, much to everyone else in the room's amusement as they stifled a giggle, as to not awake him from his almost drunken trance. The kettle clicked rather loudly as Naruto jumped into the air and landed feet first on the ceiling of the room. "Damn it, I hate that kettle," Naruto said, glaring at the metal contraption as steam rose into the air from the kettle's spout, as if mocking him. The group burst out laughing as they watched Naruto jump away from the kettle and land on the ceiling. Naruto was now fully awake and noticed the group sitting on the other end of the table. His eyes went wide and his skin went pale when he recognized the group. Naruto lost his chakra control and fell to the floor, luckily twisting in time to land on his back rather than his head. Kushina ran over to him as she checked him over. After she saw he was fine, she noticed him staring at her in disbelief, as if none of this was real. She smiled as she hugged him to her. "This is real, sweetie," Kushina said as she hugged him further. Naruto smiled and the two got up. Naruto sat down in his usual seat while Kushina sat in hers, next to Moku and the rest of his cousins. "Well, this is new, could I have all of your names please?" Naruto asked as the group smiled and nodded. "As you know, I'm your mom, Kushina said as Naruto nodded. She pointed at Moku. "This is your sister, Moku." Kushina continued as Naruto smiled and nodded. Kushina then pointed to 3 males with different colored hair, one had red hair and the other 2 had blue hair. "The one with red hair is Arashi, he's 12. Kushina said as Naruto looked at him and smiled as Arashi smiled back. "And the 2 blue-haired twins' names are Asibi on the left and Abisi on the right, they're both 13, Kushina continued as Naruto nodded to the 2 of them and smiled as the twins nodded and smiled back. "Then we have the female side of our family," Kushina said pointing at an orange-haired girl. "The orange-haired girl's name is Mai, she's 16. Kushina said as Naruto once again smiled at the girl as he acknowledged her, she smiled back at him. "The girl with the red hair." Kushina pointed to the red-haired girl. "Her name is Akane, she's 13, and she's my sister's daughter." Kushina said as Naruto smiled at her and she smiled back. "The 2 girls there with brown hair." Kushina said as she pointed at two girls sitting next to each other. The one on the left is called Emi, while the one on the right is called Akemi, they're both twins and they're both 14. Kushina said as both girls smiled at their cousin and he smiled back at the two of them. The girl with purple hair. Kushina said as she pointed at the girl with purple hair. Her name is Hanako, she's 12. Kushina said as Hanako smiled a big smile and waved at Naruto who chuckled and waved back. And the girl there with blonde hair. Kushina said pointing at a girl that looked rather familiar to Naruto's Baijutsu form. Her name is Natsuko, she's also 12. Kushina said as Natsuko grinned at Naruto who smiled and nodded back at her. What are your Tobe wives' names? Kushina asked as she grinned at Naruto's pale face. They know, Naruto thought as he tried to think of a way to calm an angry mom down. Don't worry Naruto-kun, Kushina giggled. I'm not angry at you because you have multiple women living with you, Kushina said as she was about to continue when. Actually we're proud, Hirashi said as he chuckled a little but was bopped on the top of his head by an angry Hanako. Anyway, as I was saying, Kushina said as she glared a little at her nephew who rested his head in his arms as he pouted. So long as they love you and you love all of them, then I have no problem, Kushina said as Naruto smiled and quietly sighed in relief as he was no longer a targeted man. Here you go, Naruto-kun, Hinata said as she handed Naruto the bowl of steaming ramen. Naruto smiled and shot up at her as he kissed her passionately. Hinata, at first, was shocked but soon eased into the kiss as they made out as Naruto subconsciously sat down with Hinata on his lap. After a few short minutes of the two kissing, a loud cough was heard coming from a slightly irritated Kushina and a group of giggling female cousins. The males looked away as this didn't interest them. Watching their cousin make out was something they didn't want to watch. Naruto and Hinata both stopped and blushed in embarrassment as they were caught in the act. Naruto couldn't help it, he wanted to kiss Hinata. Anyway, what are your wives' Tobe's names? Kushina asked as Naruto began to introduce the females present. This is Hinata-chan, Naruto said as he introduced Hinata who walked up front and sent her to introduce herself. As Naruto-kun said, my name is Hinata Hyuga, heir to the Hyuga clan. My likes are flowers, cinnamon rolls, apparently ramen. Now Hinata giggled as Naruto gave her a foxy grin. I like Naruto-kun, Naruto-kun's mates and people who are nice to Naruto-kun. My dislikes are people who are mean to others without understanding the situation, people who hurt others for no reason, pedophiles, rapists or any other extreme haters. My hobbies are spending time with Naruto-kun and his growing family, training to become stronger, and having fun with friends. Hinata finished as the Uzumaki family smiled as Hinata walked back in place. Naruto walked up to Kyubi who blushed when he wrapped his arms around her. This is Kyubi-chan, Naruto said as the family members nodded in understanding. They had been briefed by Sarutobi that the Kyubi was among the girls and that she was actually a good person. Kushina had hated the fox for so many years and to be told that it was a huge misunderstanding had stricken a blow on her reality once more. To suddenly stop hating your husband's and presumed son's killer was a hard task, but she understood why the Kyubi had done it. Sarutobi had explained to her and the entire family the Kyubi's reasons. Flashback. Sarutobi and the entire Uzumaki clan stood outside the hospital as Sarutobi began to explain a little more. Kushina, I need to tell you something, it may be hard to accept, but it's the truth, Sarutobi said as Kushina nodded shakily. The Uzumaki clan was all ears. The Kyubi no Kitsune did not willingly attack Konoha, it was under control by a higher force, a higher power, Sarutobi explained as the crowd gasped. Kushina was having a hard time coming to terms with that. She hated the demon with a passion, but to now find out that the demon could have been a victim was hard to accept. Where could she direct her sorrow and hate to now? It is believed that the Kyubi was being controlled, how and why are not currently known, but we know she isn't evil and that she wouldn't have done it voluntarily, Sarutobi explained as Kushina spoke up. But, how can you tell, the Kushina asked, to which Sarutobi sighed as this was gonna be rough on the ears. Because Naruto and the Kyubi are in a relation, so to speak. Apparently, Kyubi isn't bad at all, Naruto proved that to me, and if Naruto can trust her, then I think we should too, Sarutobi explained as the entire group's jaws hit the floor. What, the crowd shouted as Sarutobi smiled in victory as he put his fingers in his ears, soundproofing them. What do you mean, what, Sarutobi asked as the crowd roared. Naruto is in a relationship with the Kyubi, the crowd shouted in disbelief as Sarutobi chuckled. Yes, Kyubi is in her human form and is female, she and Naruto love each other, and so they are in a relationship, Sarutobi explained as the crowd nodded in understanding, although they were still very shocked. But, if the Kyubi was being controlled, then why hasn't she told us why or who was controlling her, Chio asked as Sarutobi sighed. The person or persons controlling her had sealed her memory of that away. She says she can remember little bits of the ordeal, Sarutobi explained as Kuriel spoke up. What did she say she could remember about her controller, Kuriel asked. Sarutobi thought for a moment as he remembered what the Kyubi had told him. Kyubi explained that her controller wore an orange mask with a spiral design, basically hiding his facial appearance. She remembers him speaking about revenge, something about betrayal, Sarutobi explained, as the group were stumped. No one they knew. Naruto explained that the man's name was Madara Uchiha from the description given, and that he would get revenge in the future, as Madara was actually the leader behind Akatsuki, and Naruto apparently defeated the Akatsuki. Sarutobi said as the group gasped once again. Madara Uchiha, the founding Uchiha clan head. That's not possible, Chio shouted in disbelief as Sarutobi nodded as he once thought that. Due to his eternal Sharingan that isn't the Cassifer, he can live forever, granted the moon is still in existence, Sarutobi explained as the crowd's eyes grew wide, so that was it, the moon was giving him eternal life. Flashback end. Kushina whipped out of her thoughts as Kyubi gave Kushina an apologetic look as she whimpered slightly. Kushina smiled as she knew that this being was not evil and that she was actually bringing happiness into her son's life. Kushina opened her arms as Kyubi embraced the woman as she sobbed slightly. "I forgive you," Kushina whispered as Kyubi continued to sob. Although she was sobbing in both happiness and relief. Naruto smiled as he watched this whole scene unfold. He knew Kyubi still felt bad about the entire situation, even though it wasn't her fault, she was merely a puppet to the real Big Cheese. After Kyubi's moment was finished, Naruto introduced the rest of the girls, who basically said similar things to Hinata. I.e. they all liked to spend time with Naruto and each other, they all disliked hateful cruel people, and all of their dreams were to live their lives in happiness with Naruto. Naruto then looked at the clocks and realized what day it was. "Hey, today's the day we all get exam papers for the Chunin exams," Naruto said as the girls agreed as they realized he was right. The group set off to go to the Hokage's office, all of them looking for a Chunin exam paper. "Hey, are you guys planning on joining the Chunin exams too?" Naruto asked all of his 10 cousins, most of the group nodded vigorously. All except for Mai. "I can't, Naruto-kun, I'm already a Chunin," Mai said as she stuck her tongue out and put 2 fingers up in the peace sign. Naruto chuckled at that, then he turned back and continued onto the Hokage tower. Oh. Konoha Hokage Tower Hokage office. Naruto and the younger age group stood inside the Hokage's office. Naruto sat down and Naruto's mates cuddled up to him. The aged Hokage sighed as he watched Naruto's female cousins giggle at the sight. "Hey, Gigi, we want Chunin exam papers, we got them in my previous life on this date, I'd rather not screw this alternate universe up even further, Kami knows what'll happen if I do," Naruto said as Sarutobi nodded in agreement as he handed the entire group Chunin exam papers. Naruto and the group said their goodbyes before leaving the room, joining the others outside. "After the Chunin exams are over, I'd like to get to know you better," Naruto, Kushina said as Moku and her cousins nodded in agreement. Naruto smiled and nodded too. Naruto was about to turn the corner when he heard an angry yell followed by a childlike yelp. Naruto suddenly remembered that on the day of the Chunin exams, he met the Sand Shinobi, along with his Tamariheim. Well, things were about to get interesting. Only Naruto, Hinata, Ino and Kyubi heard the shouts as the sound traveled from quite a way away. Naruto, Ino, Hinata and Kyubi began jumping over houses as the rest of the group followed. A few of the Uzumaki clan members were confused over this behavior out of the 4 of them, but the others understood that the 4 must have heard something. Naruto and the group rounded a corner as they noticed a black-clad ninja holding up an 11-year-old Konohamaru with both hands. Konohamaru tried to struggle out of the older boy's grip, but due to inexperience, the older boy had the upper hand. "Why, you little brat," yelled the infuriated Kankuro, who was a little more pissed than usual due to his missing sister and all. "Put him down, Kankuro-san," came the feminine voice of their female replacement for their team. Kankuro huffed as he pretty much hated the woman. Her green hair, pink eyes, and rough voice made Kankuro want to hit the girl, not for being his sister's replacement, but for acting like his sister. He couldn't help but have some sort of resentment for the green-haired girl. "And you're supposed to make me Aruka, shut the up and keep your nose out of my business," Kankuro shouted as he began to take all of his sorrow and anger out on others after his sister's disappearance. It was thought that she was kidnapped. "Whatever, but if you continue to harm shinobi or civilians from other villages, then you'll get arrested, maybe even executed," the new teammate said as Kankuro growled but knew she was correct, but this didn't stop him. He reared his fist back, sure on venting at least a little anger out. Naruto saw this and vanished in a flash of yellow light, much to Kushina's surprise and delight, her husband's fabled body flicker technique. Naruto appeared behind Kankuro, holding his outstretched arm, forcing Kankuro to topple back from the added weight. Naruto grabbed Konohamaru and put him down before Kankuro fell over. Konohamaru ran behind Hinata's legs as Hinata tended to the academy student. It would be wise not to be hitting Tobe Shinobi, in fact, it would be wise not to attack anyone from a different village to your own, because it could start up a war. Naruto said as he made sure the word war got across. Kankuro gulped but immediately shook it off. No one knew about the invasion of sand and sound, did they? No, they couldn't. Kankuro stood up and got right up to Naruto's face as he sneered. Like I give a damn. War can help combine nations, help them live easier with each other. War is the answer to this hate-filled world, Kankuro said as Naruto was mentally shocked, but he didn't show it. But war isn't always a guaranteed victory. If both sides admit, then they will be filled with hate from the losses, creating more hate and resentment. And even if two countries did live happily, all it takes is one accident, one slip-up, and then revenge is required. Revenge leads to hate and hate leads to war eventually. Those two countries will split up into another feud, and the cycle goes on, Naruto retorted as Kankuro growled. Then what's your solution to peace? Kankuro yelled as Naruto smiled at him. Forgive and forget. It's true, revenge is desired, but it will never be the answer. Once you have revenge, you find that on your path to revenge, others have wronged you, and you have wronged others, creating a new system of revenge, where you will want to kill more and more people will want to kill you. It may not be glamorous, but you have to bite the bullet. Swallow your pride, and just give up on revenge. Accidents occur, only true evil must be dealt with, Naruto said as Kankuro visibly calmed. What is the definition of true evil? Kankuro asked as Naruto thought for a minute. The person who intentionally attacks a village to cause deaths for his own gain. People who are ordered to do that are not evil. Ninjas must follow orders. It's our path, always has been. Always will be. True evil is someone who wrongs hundreds for no reason other than achieving power or control over others that is inexcusable. That is true evil. That is when it is acceptable for revenge, Naruto answered as Kankuro sat down on a bench. I'm sorry about all this. My sister went missing a while back. We don't know what happened to her. Gaara has been a lot more edgy than usual, and he and I seem to be venting most of our hatred out on others, Kankuro said as he sighed. Naruto smiled and sat next to him as he placed a hand on his shoulder. Kankuro-san, your sister isn't missing. She came to Konoha to apply for citizenship over here, along with her ninja rank, Naruto said as Kankuro looked at him with a pale visage as he detected no deceit. As if on cue, Temari glumped her brother with a happy hug. Hello Kankuro-san, Temari said as Kankuro hugged her back. He then pulled back and gave her a stern look. Where the hell have you been? Gaara almost killed me 5 times. He was so pissed, Kankuro shouted as Temari giggled at her angry brother. She got off of him and bopped him in the back of his head. Ow, what the hell was that for? Kankuro asked as he nursed the growing lump on the back of his head. That was for shouting at me, and for your information, I came here to live with my Tobe husband. Temari said as she looked at Naruto with a seductive glance as Naruto blushed and walked away, lest he be strapped to the bench and rode for all he was worth. As Naruto gave the two arguing siblings some space, he noticed a red-headed Gaara hiding behind a fence. Naruto looked over the fence and stifled a giggle as Gaara was literally caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Tell anyone I like cookies and I will kill you, Gaara said as Naruto chuckled and grinned at Gaara, who was surprised that his demonic chakra didn't work. Gaara, in his surprise, dropped the last cookie in the jar. As Gaara went to pick it up, a squirrel picked it up and ran away with Gaara's cookie. No, Gaara whispered. No, Gaara spoke a little louder. No, that squirrel stole his ma cookie, Gaara shouted as he started to fly into the air, using his sand as a floating device, chasing the squirrel up and down trees. Gosh, that red-haired boy is chasing my youthful friend, Lee shouted, who seemed to pop out of thin air as flames began to sparkle in his eyes as he chased Gaara around up and down the tree. That animal has food, Choji shouted, who seemed to pop out of nowhere just like Lee as he too joined the chase for the squirrel. Kiba and Akamaru happened to be walking by when Kiba stopped momentarily to tie his shoes, accidentally tying the leash to his shoes. Akamaru looked up and noticed a squirrel. It barked and began to chase after it as Kiba was being dragged across the floor and up and down trees in the process. Shino, who had been with Kiba for his morning walk, spotted that the cookie had an insect trapped inside one of the chocolate sprinkles. Save me, the insect said in a high-pitched voice as Shino nodded and began chasing the cookie. Sai was walking along the route, making his way to the Chunin exams. He noticed that during the chase, Lee's spandex had torn, showing he wasn't wearing underwear. Sai smiled and began chasing Lee. Sai thought with an amused smile. Naruto looked on at the scene as a tick appeared above his left eyebrow. Kushina walked up to Naruto and asked him the question on every Uzumaki clan member's mind. Is it always this weird around here? Kushina asked as Naruto nodded with a sigh. After Naruto nodded, a burst of fire blew by his ear, making a bullseye contact with the cookie, burning it to ashes. Shino cried as he couldn't find any remains of the insect inside the cookie. No, I'll starve. Oh wait, I have 3 more king-size burgers, Choji said as he smiled and began to dig into the 3 inhuman-size burgers. Akamaru, what the hell? Kiba shouted as he got up as Akamaru barked happily as he set off again, making Kiba hit the floor again as Akamaru followed the scent of the squirrel. No, I will not allow that unyouthful dog to harm my friend, Lee shouted as he sped after the pint-sized dog that was carrying a 12-year-old without difficulty. Sai chased after Lee as he had his hand behind his head, flapping about in an anime-style run, whilst shouting something homovul. Gaara was rocking in a corner as he sobbed to himself. Cookie-chan, Gaara repeated until he looked up at Naruto. Cookie-chan, Gaara asked as his eyes sparkled sadly in an anime-style sadness. Naruto chuckled and held out a long cylinder-shaped item. Gaara took it and read the label. Ginger biscuits. Gaara squealed as he held it close to him. Naruto's sweat dropped as he slowly backed away from the obviously delusional group of shinobi. I think we should go now, Naruto said as everyone nodded and left. Kankuro stayed behind as he and his replacement teammate helped Gaara to the Chunin exams. Tenten told Naruto she'd see him there as she went back and helped Neji get Lee back. Genzi too had to go back and get Kiba and Shino. Oh. Time skip exam room's first floor. Naruto and all the other Konoha and Suna ninjas arrived at the first floor of the examination rooms. Kushina gave Naruto a hug for good luck as she walked back towards Kurenai and Anko. Kurenai, Anko, Tsunade, Shizune and Kyubi each gave him a kiss for good luck. They walked up the stairs until they saw two Chunin in disguise, making sure that the weaker genin did not pass on to the examination room. The group kept walking as they decided it would be less competition for them. They were about to head towards one of the entrance rooms when a confident, if overconfident voice called out to the group. "Hey you, what is your name?" came the booming voice of Rock Lee. Naruto turned around to see Lee standing on the banister, looking out over the group. Tenten came up behind him and bopped him on the head, causing him to fall flat on his face at the bottom stage. "Stop challenging my boyfriend," Tenten yelled as she picked the pancake version of Lee up and began dragging him towards the entrance. Naruto smiled as he looked at Lee. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki," Naruto answered as Rock Lee gave his best to smile back at him, even though it was probably physically impossible for him to do it in his current state. The group entered the room. As they looked around, Naruto noticed several people he knew there. Kin, Taiya, and the other Sound 4. Why were the Sound 5 here? They were supposed to meet them when Sasuke deflected. Did Orochimaru already know of Sasuke's death? Well, it wouldn't be abnormal, the council wouldn't have kept their mouths shut about it. It seemed that maybe the death of Kabuto would have alarmed Orochimaru to the happenings. It seemed Orochimaru was planning something special. After all, he used the Sound 5 as a protection squad during the last invasion, using their abilities in sealing to create an impenetrable wall to keep people from intervening in Sarutobi's death. So, was Orochimaru planning something different this time around? Naruto narrowed his eyes as he thought, if Orochimaru was planning something different, then this would be an unpredictable match. Naruto had no experience on exactly what would happen next. Kabuto was dead, so the outburst with the infuriated Sound Squad wouldn't happen. Naruto's hyperactive challenge would never happen. Orochimaru giving the curse mark to Sasuke would never happen. So, what would happen instead if all those factors were removed? The groups chatted amongst each other as they pretended not to notice the glances they received from the Sound group. Eventually Ibiki broke the doors down and shouted in a booming voice. "Alright you little shits, calm the down," Ibiki shouted as everyone's sweat dropped because the entire room was hardly making a noise. "But, none of us were talking," Naruto said as Ibiki directed his attention to the blonde. He blushed and sighed as he realized that they weren't and that he just made himself look stupid, which would give more of the possible top Chunins an edge. Alright you cocky bastard, get thee in my class," Ibiki said as the group followed him. Naruto remembered that Ibiki would try to play with people's minds, try to maneuver them into doing something based on pressure, although, this year, none of them were falling for it. "Hey, cousins," Onisan, Naruto whispered as the Uzumaki group looked at Naruto as they began to form a line to walk into the room. "Don't answer any questions. The 10th question requires you to just stay in the class. All the other questions are pointless. Besides the means of narrowing down the herd," Naruto whispered, so only those directly near him and listening to him could hear. The group nodded as they were given a number and a correspond desk to that number to sit at. Naruto sat down as Hinata sat next to him. He found it ironic that they were sitting next to each other in this past life. Tuino sat next to Naruto as Tenten sat in front of him and Temari sat behind him. The others were split up around the room. Haku and Isaribi sat next to each other. Genzi and Shion also sat next to each other. "Okay, the rules for this test are simple. You have 1 hour to answer 10 questions. You must at least answer 30% correctly, or you will fail," Ibiki said as Naruto and the others smirked. "This would be a cakewalk. If you are caught cheating, then we will subtract points as soon as you are caught 10 times, then you are automatically disqualified. If you have any problems, write a letter and then send it to your house, addressed to your mom. I'm sure I'll get it," Ibiki said as he grinned at his little remark. Naruto growled as that was now a touchy subject. "You may begin. May Kami have mercy on your souls," Ibiki said monotonously as he left the room as the Chunin bystanders handed out exam papers. 50 minutes had passed and Naruto and the others hadn't written a word, much to some of their neighbors' surprise. "Alright, time's up. Here comes the 10th question," Ibiki said with a smirk as he watched some of the interested faces. However, you may choose if you choose to try to answer the 10th question, then you have to risk not becoming a chunin ever, Ibiki said, as a few of them blinked in confusion. What I mean is, if you fail to answer the question correctly, then you will never be allowed to retake the chunin exams again, Ibiki said as the room gasped in surprise. Well, mostly, Naruto decided he felt like taking the piss. What, oh no, how awful, however will we survive, Naruto shouted as he pretended to panic in his seat as the other giggled or chuckled at his antics, while the more edgy and less confident were still shocked and weren't in a playful mood. We're all going to die, Naruto screamed as he pulled on his hair. Ibiki was growing irritated. What will happen if I don't become a chunin, Naruto asked rhetorically as Ibiki's ears started to steam. I want my mommy, Naruto pretended to cry as Naruto's mates were in hysterics along with his cousins. Shut the up, Ibiki shouted as his face almost glowed with a red light. Naruto began to snicker. But sensei, if I don't become a chunin then however will I go on missions, Naruto asked as Ibiki restrained himself. You can go on missions anyway, chunin rank gives you access to better, higher paid missions, Ibiki answered in a calm voice as he resisted the urge to kill the blonde. I see your point, but who would want to give up chasing Tora, Naruto asked, as all the Leaf Ninjas chuckled at that, since Tora was infamous for being the most evil and hard to catch cats in the world. Ibiki sighed as the majority put their hands up to leave, not having Naruto's confidence outbreak like before, most of them weren't gutsy enough to stay put. Alright, 14 teams remain, will all of you PL? He was cut off as several kunai came flying through the window, holding up a banner with the name Anko Mitarashi, and below saying property of Naruto Uzumaki, which made him blush as she winked at him. As you can see, my name is Anko Mitarashi, and no one may touch me, but Naruto-kun, so stop your fantasizing and get to training grounds for the Forest of Death. Anko smiled as she shunshined to the forest, along with Naruto and the others in his group via group shunshin that Naruto had made. Eventually the others arrived at the Forest of Death. Anko called out teams that she had picked out specially because some of the new leaf groups hadn't been assigned teams as of yet. The teams went like this. Moku Arashi Akane. Asibi Imi Hinako. Ibisi Akemi Natsuko. Naruto Hinata Ino. Iruka's Tamari Isaribi. Shion Haku Pichi. Pentenli Niji. Shikamaru Choji Chichi. Sionim Hashi. Genzi Kibashino. Penkuro Gara and Yoshi. Hindosu's Aku. Ayakidamaru Seiken. Akusa's Buto Shili. The groups were each given a heaven or an earth scroll. They were told that they needed both to pass and that they were to open them when they reached the tower. Alright Gakis, and Naruto-kun and Anko said as she waved at Naruto, who chuckled and waved back. You may begin, she shouted as the groups vanished into the forest. Time skip 1 hour later, Forest of Death. Naruto and the other leaf group stood together as they contemplated. There wouldn't be enough scrolls to go around, so competition was inevitable. I know what you're thinking, but I have a way to get us all pass without resorting to competition among us, Naruto said as Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. And how would you be able to do that, Shikamaru asked as Naruto flashed him a foxy smile. I use a blood clone jutsu and transform into either type of scroll. When that's done, all I need to do is hide my chakra, which I can do up to a master level, and then just sit there and look pretty, Naruto answered as he grinned. But, wouldn't the Chunin guard suspect something, Choji asked as Naruto once again chuckled. The rules are like those before. If they can't catch us cheating, or prove we were cheating, then we're allowed to pass, Naruto answered as he let his guard down to show the group the seals. Naruto shot forward a little as blood splurted from his mouth, the blade went up and twisted. Naruto felt limp, but he already felt the fox's chakra beginning to help. The dark figure jumped back as the group went over to protect Naruto. The figure chuckled darkly as he stepped closer and closer towards the light. Everyone's faces paled further and further. Sasuke. The Konoha group stood away from the once thought deceased psychopath. Sasuke looked out at the group as he sneered a foul sneer, his eyes showing only the craziness they once shown in his previous timeline. Naruto looked at him with wide eyes, not believing that he could still be alive. Oh, I killed you, Naruto shouted as Sasuke's dark chuckle echoed throughout the clearing. Naruto began gritting his teeth as Sasuke began to laugh at him. Oh, but you did, you see I had some help in my revival, Sasuke said as Naruto frowned at him, wondering what he could possibly mean. And what do you mean by that, Naruto asked as Sasuke gave him an evil grin. Everyone around Naruto was now starting to approach him, slowly but surely, planning on ending his life. What I mean by that, dope, is that someone offered to bring me back from the dead at the price of my obedient soul and the price of serving him to the ends of the world. So long as I got my revenge, I didn't care. Sasuke said as Naruto growled at him. Revenge was for people who were wronged. Naruto was wronged, Sasuke was merely adding nails to his coffin. And who revived you, Naruto asked as Sasuke grinned an evil crazed grin as Naruto narrowed his eyes at the boy who would forever bring hatred to himself. All of a sudden, the temperature in the clearing dropped tremendously as a dark figure appeared from within the forest undergrowth. Orochimaru's pale face sneered with a look of power lust as he stared at Naruto. "Ukikuku Naruto-koi, we meet at last," Orochimaru said in a sickening voice as he stared at Naruto. Naruto felt sickened by his honorific. "What do you mean, koi?" Hinata asked as she almost spat venom at Orochimaru. Orochimaru gave a sickening chuckle as he pointed at Naruto. "When this is all over I will add Naruto to my male harem, along with Sasuke." Orochimaru chuckled as Naruto's face went green. Hinata had to restrain herself from charging at the pale pedophile. "Lol. Like you will," Naruto screeched as he pumped a fist. Orochimaru gave another one of his pantomime chuckles as he stared at Naruto a little longer. "Why did you resurrect Sasuke?" Naruto asked as he glared at the two of them. Orochimaru looked at Sasuke and then back at Naruto with a chuckle. "Because I can use his body as a replacement for my own, and when I kill you, I can resurrect you and use your body as my play toy." Orochimaru chuckled as Sasuke sneered. "Everybody wins, I get my revenge, Orochimaru gets to live for eternity, and you get the satisfied of knowing you died at the hands of an Uchiha," Sasuke said as he laughed an evil laugh, similar to Orochimaru's. Naruto growled but calmed down enough to get his last question answered. "But how did you do it?" Naruto asked Orochimaru coldly as the sick pale weirdo licked his lips and began his explanation. "You see, I have been following you on your mission to Wave. I saw you kill Sasuke, I saw you kill Kabuto, and I saw that vile demon form of yours." Orochimaru chuckled as Naruto restrained himself further from killing the demented gimp as he realized there was more he needed to say. "I waited in the clearing until everyone had gone, and then I used my resurrection technique to bring Sasuke back," Orochimaru explained as Naruto's eyes went wide. Flashback. At that moment Naruto's eyes caught another chakra signature hiding in the woods. "Who's that?" Naruto thought as he studied the person's chakra. It was strangely familiar, he had felt it before not so long ago in his past life. Oh. As the food was served to everyone, Naruto ate quietly for once. That extra chakra signature that he felt during the woods, it felt familiar but not so familiar that he would remember it for being good. If it wasn't a good chakra, what was it? He had to ponder this further later on. Flashback end. "So it was your chakra I sensed during the woods. I should have known the scent of your evil, twisted chakra," Naruto spat as Orochimaru chuckled. "Well, why didn't you go check it out?" Orochimaru asked as he mocked the fuming blonde. "Why should I if the person left me alone? Why shouldn't I? There wasn't that much that was interesting about it, and you saw me destroy Kabuto without an effort, so why challenge me? You know you're no match," Naruto stated as Orochimaru growled. "We'll see, Gaki, I'm not as pathetic in battle as Kabuto was. You will meet your defeat in the hands of one of the Sannin," Orochimaru said as he was about to start charging. "Wait, I'm the one who's supposed to end his life," Sasuke cried out as Orochimaru turned around and backhanded him as Sasuke soared through the air and skidded across the floor. "I will be the one to hurt him now. I'll allow you to finish him off, but I will be the one to bring him to his knees. Now what do you say?" Orochimaru asked as Sasuke looked down and whimpered. "The eyes, Mamister," Sasuke stuttered as Orochimaru chuckled at the Uchiha. Naruto and the others couldn't help but find it amusing also. "That's my submissive little, now go and warm your mouth, I'll be using it after this," Orochimaru said as Sasuke nodded. Naruto and the others almost vomited but kept it in. "Now where was I?" Orochimaru said as he started to charge Naruto. Naruto activated Mitsukagen as he summoned Kagoku. Kagoku was a large silver blade with a golden trim. The trim mainly went around the edges, but at the base of the blade, seams of gold sprouted upwards like a tree. The handle was a red ruby that evaporated water, thus, never losing a grip on your sword because the ruby would evaporate sweat. At the bottom of the sword was a golden circular crest with a Uzumaki swirl made out of a shiny blue sapphire. Orochimaru chuckled at the sword as he pulled out his sword, Kusanagi, as he charged at the blonde. Naruto twirled his sword as he met Orochimaru's blows with ease as Orochimaru grinned a devilish grin as he upped his effort, leaving Naruto and Orochimaru rather equal. "Damn, due to my height and body mass, even though I'm still very strong and powerful, I still don't have the body mass to pull off the better of my jutsus or pummel him into the floor," Naruto thought as he became irritated. Sure, Naruto was sure not to get hit that easy due to his bloodline, but it was still annoying to know that Orochimaru was still equal with him, like last time he fought him. "Girls, take everybody to the tower, I don't want him to use you as gambling chips," Naruto said as the girls nodded and jumped away, along with everybody else. Orochimaru laughed as he saw them leave. "Now no one remains to save you, not that they could resisting me, and my rape is futile, now you might as well submit to me," Orochimaru chuckled as Naruto growled, his eyes Dojutsu turning from a gold to a blood reddish gold, with an X-slitted pupil, connecting with the 4-star-shaped tomos at each corner of his eyes. "Do your morals and being your," Naruto shouted as a burst of golden chakra surrounding him as he started to change physically. Orochimaru gasped as his eyes clouded in both awe and lust. Naruto's body had changed, his body had been covered in a white robe, his face had turned paler, and his hair had turned into a pale yellow as it stood up a little more. There was a golden halo above his head as it rotated around slowly, shining a pleasant golden glow. And last but not least, two pure white wings had sprouted out of his shoulder blades. Fukuki-kuku, what do we have here? It seems my little V-toy is more than he appears, Orochimaru said as an evil glint went across his eyes. Sasuke growled as he felt the power radiating off of Naruto. Hey Dobe, how did you get that power? Sasuke asked as he planned on getting the power for himself also. Naruto sighed as he knew Sasuke would ask something on those lines. I wouldn't even bother asking really, this power was given to me by a powerful force, and that force is something you will never get. The blessings from Naruto explained, as Sasuke growled an irritated growl. Before Sasuke could comment again, Orochimaru used this distraction as an advantage as he once again charged at Naruto, who easily blocked the lunge and used his sword to flick Orochimaru back into a backflip. Naruto disappeared and reappeared in the direction Orochimaru was heading, in between his flight path. Naruto swung his sword down and chopped Orochimaru in half, as both halves of his body fell to the floor with a slump. Naruto began to walk toward Sasuke, who was shivering in fear. Naruto was about to end the Uchiha's life when he felt something move behind him. Naruto jumped out the way as he dodged several flying snakes being shot at him. Naruto looked at Orochimaru's body as the snake seemed to have been fired from within him. Some snakes slithered out of Orochimaru's torso and connected with his lower body. The snakes dragged the lower half and connected it to the upper half as the body became whole again. Fukuki-kuku, it won't be so easy to kill me. He didn't get to finish as the ground below him exploded into an inferno, singeing his face and causing a lot of lacerations to appear all over his body. Orochimaru jumped back into a different position as he coughed some blood up. Oh, the pedo snake asked as he coughed up some more blood, much to Naruto's pleasure. You see, when you pretended to be dead, I dropped an explosive note on my way over to Sasuke. You fell for my ambush and let your guard down. Naruto smirked as Orochimaru growled as he went back to charging Naruto. Oh. Forest of Death with Naruto's mates and co. The group had been running through the forest at a great speed, not coming into contact with any teams. The group had been running for about 10 minutes, they could still hear the sounds of Naruto's and Orochimaru's battle, although they were happy to hear that Naruto was apparently winning, due to the enraged screams of Orochimaru every time Naruto landed a hit. The group had made it to the tower as they entered, waiting for Naruto to show up. They smiled as they knew Orochimaru had something coming to him, and this time it wasn't going to be a clean getaway. Oh. Forest of Death back with Naruto. The two had been fighting for about 10 minutes now. Naruto was pretending to look worn down, so Orochimaru would lessen his guard. It worked. Orochimaru was worn out too, he had used the majority of his jutsu to try and kill Naruto, but to no prevail. Well, it seems that we are evenly matched, Orochimaru panted out as Naruto hid his smile as he too puffed out his retort. So it seems, Naruto wheezed as Orochimaru smiled. Orochimaru was about to charge again when he felt his world slip into darkness. The old pedo opened his eyes as he looked into a plane of darkness with a water-filled floor. So thinking of killing our mate were you? Well, I guess we'll make you suffer. Then Kurenai's voice echoed as two snakes slithered around Orochimaru's arms and legs as they coiled and bind his arms and legs together in a painful vice. But how? When Orochimaru's panicked voice sounded as three girlish yet dark chuckles were heard. Number 1, it's a Jinjutsu. Second, Kurenai-chan is a Jinjutsu specialist. And 3, when you let your guard down. Anko's voice echoed as well through the plane. Orochimaru growled as he struggled against his confinements. Slithering like a snake on the floor, try to get free. How funny, came the voice of Kyubi as she chuckled loudly as all three girls appeared with a physical body standing next to Orochimaru. We're going to make you pay for causing Naruto so much trouble, make you pay for making sure Naruto grew up alone and beaten, make you pay for ever causing him any pain, the three shouted as the three brutally comboed him into dust. When the three felt they had dealt enough pain, Anko and Kurenai lifted him up enough as Kyubi started to go through hand seals. When Kyubi was done, she slammed both palms onto Orochimaru's chest. Oni Kontenchu, Kyubi yelled out as a red glow that sprayed outward in a circle of red light as Orochimaru withered in pain. Kyubi inserted her hand into the red glow as her hand seemed to go into Orochimaru's body. When she pulled her hand back out again, a whitish-bluish element was in her hands as she pulled it out of Orochimaru's body. Here you see this is your soul, and by taking your soul out of your body, I am effectively killing you. See you can, dying pedophile snake bastard. Kyubi spat in rage as she yanked the last of the soul out and let go of it as the soul dropped to the floor and vanished when it hit the floor, leaving a glowing green residue behind. Their Shinigami-sama will be happy to know that Orochimaru is off of his to-kill list. Naruto chuckled as he witnessed the three girls get so pissed off over his past pain. The three girls walked up to Naruto and each gave him a kiss as he returned it. Liam and Lemon. Naruto x Fem Kyubi x Kurenai x Anko. Lemon does you lick his lemons. Suddenly, Naruto opened his eyes as he was lying on the floor with three of his beautiful mates on top of him. Kyubi was kissing him passionately as Kurenai and Anko started to remove his trousers, much to the blonde's surprise. Wait, what, you can't, we're in the forest of death, what if an enemy finds us and kills us? Naruto questioned worriedly as Kyubi kissed him again and traveled down to his left ear. We set traps up now, shut up and mark us, Kyubi huskily growled into his ear as Naruto growled back and bit down on her neck, making her groan and whimper with pleasure. Anko and Kurenai continued to remove his ing as they started to remove theirs. Kyubi took Naruto's top off as she took her attire off too. After all of them were naked, Kyubi got back to making out with Naruto. Anko and Kurenai took turns in deeping him as the other would lick up and down his shaft in the meantime. Kyubi had stopped tongue battling with Naruto as she submitted to him and let him explore her mouth as much and as deep as he wanted. Anko lied down with her backside to the earth as she began ing on Naruto's s. Kurenai lied on top of her as she began deeping Naruto while humming into his soldier. Kurenai's and Anko's s rubbed against each other as the two of them pleased their alpha, their womans rubbing against each other's in their excitement. Naruto groaned and couldn't keep a track of what he was doing as he felt two soft velvety tongues playing with his man. Kyubi felt the loss of movement as she had an annoyance and took over as she began to explore Naruto's mouth without restriction. Naruto into Kurenai's mouth as she drank most of it up as quickly as she could, trying to get every last drop she could. When Naruto slowed down in his shooting, she got all that her mouth could fit and shared it with both Kyubi and Anko as the three made out, much to Naruto's enjoyment. Without warning, Naruto got up and entered Anko as she cried out in pain, much to Naruto's surprise. She's still a V, Naruto thought with bewilderment. He felt extremely bad at what he had done. He remembered hearing things from Kakashi that he had gotten Anko in bed one time and that he'd slept with her. So, Naruto presumed her hymen wouldn't still be there. So, why was it? Naruto began pulling out, feeling awful with himself in doing what he did. As he began to pull out, a teary Anko flipped round so she was facing Naruto and pushed herself back in fully. She did this motion with much skill and speed. Don't you dare pull out, Anko said as Naruto gulped at her angry teary face and held onto her as she silently sobbed into his chest. You're still a V, Anko-chan, Naruto asked as she nodded into his chest. He felt her smile spread across her face as she nodded. Yes, Naruto-kun. You see, I never wanted to have V with any of my boyfriends, I could tell all they wanted was V, Anko said coldly as Naruto nodded with a smile. I feel honored to be your first, Naruto said as Anko kissed him happily with tears flowing down her face, although these were happy tears. After a while, Anko rubbed herself against Naruto's groin as she whimpered into his ears, wanting him to vinto her, to dominate her. Naruto complied as he vinto her with much vigor as Anko's screams of satisfied and joy sounded through the forest as she screamed his name in ecstasy. Kurenai smiled as she crawled over Anko's body, who was lying on her backside on the floor as Naruto vinto her. Kurenai lied on Anko's body as Kurenai began making out with her hands roaming, squeezing and playing with the purple-haired Jonin's s. Anko wrapped her arms around Kurenai's body as her body screamed out in satisfied as she felt her release nearing before she wanted it. Kyubi went around Naruto's back and wrapped her arms around his back as she pushed her large assets into his back as she kissed it, making Naruto shudder with satisfied from her touch. Naruto wanted this to last forever, but he felt Anko nearing her release, so he allowed himself a quick release too, as he felt it would only be fair and that Anko would be sad if he didn't. Kurenai felt that Naruto was about to, so she got off of Anko as Naruto brought his head down and sank his teeth into Anko as she did the same to him. Naruto grunted as he felt all the excitement and satisfied reach its climax as he grunted and sprayed his seed all over his mate's inner walls. Anko felt Naruto's seed flow through her and that, along with the mate mark, drove her over the edge as her eyes rolled back into her head as she all over Naruto's rod. Naruto nuzzled at Anko's neck as he was coming down from his release. He noticed that she had passed out and that she now had two purple fox ears atop her head, along with a purple fox tail whipping about happily behind her. Naruto smiled as he purred into her ear, bringing out her own purr as she held him as tight to her as possible. Naruto realized that she wouldn't let go and that he would have to mark the other girls later if he would ever get round to doing it at this pace. The other two smiled at him knowingly as they dressed themselves, Naruto and Anko. It was then that Naruto realized that he had forgotten something or someone. Hey, what about Sasuke? Naruto asked as he looked around, looking for the deranged lunatic. Kurenai smiled and hugged him to soothe him. I was wondering when you would ask us that. We sealed his unconscious body into this scroll. He should be awake in about 4 hours, and when he wakes up he will be forced out of this seal, so we need to get him to the others quickly so we can decide on his demise, Kyubi smiled evilly as Naruto chuckled and nodded as he placed the scroll in his pocket as he carried Anko in his arms. As her legs wrapped around his and she sighed happily as she nuzzled into the crook of his neck, purring soundly as he purred back. Oh. The Forest of Death. 20 minutes later. Tower. Naruto and his mates arrived at the tower in the middle of the forest. As he heard a commotion going on, Naruto quickly, yet gently handed Anko to Kurenai, who picked her up as Naruto ran towards the group. Naruto growled as he watched an unconscious Hinata lay on the floor with a girl he saw with the Sand siblings using her as a hostage. What is the meaning of this? You will give me Hinata back safely, or I will do unimaginable things to you, Naruto said as Iruka smiled devilishly as she chuckled a little. She looked at Naruto with a deep burning hatred as she placed the kunai at the base of her neck. What happened? Naruto asked Ino in the mental link as she explained to him. Hinata collapsed all of a sudden, and this girl takes her hostage. We have no idea why she just kept asking to see you or she would kill Hinata if we made any move to help her or to warn you, Ino told Naruto mentally, as she was very scared for her friend and fellow Naruto lover's safety. So we meet again, Naruto, Iruka said in an evil voice as Naruto growled in annoyance. We have never met before, I only know your name, Naruto said as Iruka chuckled once again in a knowing sort of way. Tell me, Naruto Baka, what does my name spell backwards? Iruka asked as Naruto thought about it for a second, and when he did, his eyes went wide at a realization, and he suddenly became very scarred for Hinata's safety. That's right, I'm back, you bunch of traitors, Sakura shouted as she gripped the handle of her kunai dangerously. The others went wide-eyed as they too made the realization. So before I do anything drastic, I want you to tell me something. Is Sasuke still alive? Sakura asked as she had been cautious. If Sasuke and Orochimaru returned instead of Naruto, then that would mean that Naruto would be dead and that she could kill the girl, knowing she was safe with Orochimaru around. But if Naruto came back, then she could use one of the girls as a gambling chip in return for the safety of her Sasuke-kun. The eyes, he's in here, Naruto answered as he sighed in relief. He had a gambling chip for Hinata's safety. Sakura frowned as she looked at the scroll. Prove it, she said as Naruto released the object within as Sasuke's unconscious body slumped to the floor. Sakura smiled and blushed as she looked at the raven-haired scumbag. Then I will trade you Sasuke for Hinata and a free getaway for the two of us, Sakura said as Naruto nodded instantly. No way was he going to gamble with Hinata's life. Sakura smiled devilishly as she sealed Hinata into a scroll as Naruto sealed Sasuke into a scroll too. The two walked up to each other and handed each other their scrolls as Naruto and Sakura both jumped away. Naruto instantly unsealed the scroll and was relieved to find Hinata unharmed and breathing steadily as he brought her into his arms. Sakura ran away as she unsealed Sasuke in the middle of a clearing. She smiled with happiness as she stroked his face and then brought her hands down to his pants. Glad to see that his 1-inch wonder wasn't harmed, Sakura though, as she gave the small shaft a stroke and smiled to herself. LMAO. All of a sudden, Sasuke's body went poof and a Naruto clone lay there smirking. Boom. Was all the clone said before blowing up into a great explosion, blowing Sakura into tiny little pieces. Naruto smiled as he heard the explosion go off. The other girls came up behind Naruto and gave him a hug as they relished in the fact that their family was still all there and that Naruto didn't suffer. How did you do that, Naruto-kun? Haku asked as Naruto hugged her too. That was one of my spare earth scrolls. If she had looked at it, then she would have noticed it to be an earth scroll. Thankfully she is clueless when it comes to scrolls, so the blood clone inside transformed into a Sasuke lookalike before turning, being unsealed from the scroll, which she didn't notice vanished when Sasuke was unsealed and reappeared when I sealed it again. Naruto explained as the girls giggled at his smart plan. Moku came up to Naruto as she hugged him happily. I'm glad she's okay. These girls seem to truly love you. I'm happy that you have found happiness after all the pain you have been through. Moku said as Naruto smiled and looked at his cousins who were smiling and nodding too. Thank you, Naruto said as he let go, and the group continued on with Naruto carrying both Anko and Hinata, who both wrapped their legs around one of his legs and nuzzled into his neck, purring happily as Naruto purred back. The group re-entered the tower and they handed their scrolls to the Jonin guards, who looked suspiciously at the scrolls, doing the math that there shouldn't be that many scrolls. After they checked them thoroughly and found no missing details, they let the group continue as they gave a mental handshake to whoever made such a realistic copy. When they entered the large room, they noticed they were the first to enter. Naruto sighed as he knew that the Chunin exam's time period lasted for about 4 days before anyone left remaining were disqualified. Naruto-kun, came 2 female voices as Naruto looked on to see Tsunade and Shizune running at them. Naruto smiled as he was brought into a hug by the two of them. Did the plan work? Tsunade asked, a tint of worry in her voice. If it hadn't. Naruto smiled and rubbed her cheek. Yes, it worked, Tsunade. Naruto said as Tsunade blushed and kissed him sweetly again. As she left the kiss, Shizune jumped in and repeated her teacher's actions. Lucky shit, Hey coughed back in the corner of the room as he was suddenly hit in the back of the head by a masked Anbu with purple hair. Watch your language and for the love of Kami, take your meds, you're going to die, you thick-headed Jonin, Yugao told her boyfriend as the sickly Mads snorted. I need not take my meds if Kami has told me it is my time, then it is my time. I am not going to rely on science to prolong my life, it would only anger Kami-sama, Hate said as Yugao grew a tick above her right eye. Stop it with your damn Jehovah's Witness bullcrap, Yugao shouted in irritation as Hade argued back. Naruto's sweat dropped as he led the group over to the side. Naruto-kun, what happened to Sasuke? Tsunade asked as Naruto smirked and brought out the real scroll with Sasuke. Tsunade smiled deviously as she picked it up and handed it to Ibiki, who shunshined to her almost on instinct. Tsunade thanked him and he went on his way. Tsunade-hime, why did you give the scroll to Ibiki-san? Naruto asked as Tsunade chuckled darkly as Naruto's sweat dropped once again as she made her laugh out to be of a cackling witch. I gave Sasuke to Ibiki for a while, to torture and abuse as much as he deems necessary. Tsunade said happily as Naruto laughed. But don't worry Naruto-kun, we told him to keep him alive, at least, long enough for you to exact a painful, yet hilarious execution. Shizune said with a smirk as Naruto nodded his head as he thought on how to end his life. Something ironic would be good, like dying of straight snusnuya, that would wreck his mind. Dying from the V of a woman, Naruto thought as he chuckled, which made Hinata laugh at his amused face. Well, it is pretty late and there's nothing left to do, so I guess we should all get some sleep. Isaribi said as she took Naruto by the hand and dragged him to the bedrooms the Chunin exams provided. She was immediately followed by a swarm of giggling women as Naruto's sweat dropped again. Moku and his cousins laughed a bit at their actions before they too resided to their selected bedrooms. Naruto was shoved onto the bed as pairs of bodies piled on him, they all cuddled up to him as Naruto was surprised that he hadn't been violated yet. He looked down to look at Hinata and Anko, who had just woken up as they lay on his chest kissing it genteelly and lovingly. Naruto purred as Kurenai rubbed her cheek against Naruto's as she purred back. Naruto was starting to fall asleep until Hinata bit him as he growled at her. Sorry about that, I guess I was falling asleep huh, Naruto said as Hinata nodded as she shuffled around until she was comfortable and started to rub his chest. You know, earlier when Sakura took me hostage I passed out from the same sickness I felt a few nights ago, Hinata said worriedly as Naruto started to get worried too. Tsunade-chan, can you do a jutsu on Hinata to check her out? I don't want to take any risks whatsoever. Naruto asked as Tsunade nodded her head as she curled over on the extra-large bed they ordered and used a medical on Hinata's arm. Tsunade stroked up and down Hinata's body with her hands as she checked her body with her medical diagnostic jutsu. When Tsunade's hands traveled over her stomach she gasped. Hinata are pregnant. Naruto had long since passed out after Tsunade's declaration, along with Hinata, who passed out over Naruto's unconscious body. Everyone there was blushing up a storm as they felt great joy for Hinata and wished to congratulate her. Dreamscape. Naruto was floating through the same abandoned space of nothingness that he always did when either the Shinigami or the two goddesses summoned him. He was in great thought about what Tsunade had said, he was going to be a father, and a father at the age of 13, well, 19 with a 13-year-old's body. He didn't know whether to feel happy for the fact that one of his more secret dreams was becoming a reality, the dream to become a father. Or feel scared for the fact that the villagers had not yet accepted him and that they would try to harm either Hinata or his child in the future. Then there was the fact that his family could be pissed or he might screw up as a parent. Was it the right time? Was he ready to sire children and start an even larger family? Is this what Hinata wanted? Is this what his family would want? But there was one person he knew would want the child, and that was Naruto himself. Naruto then had a flashback of Hinata during their lovemaking. Flashback. No, I want you now, I want your children now, I want to raise them and love them like I love you. I always wanted your child and now I'm going to have it. Flashback end. Naruto thought on those words. Were they just something she said during her Vul High or was there a deeper, more meaningful reason behind it? Naruto then began to ponder and hid his face with the palm of his hand as he realized how stupid he had been, not paying attention to the obvious signs of pregnancy. Flashback. Anger directed at him for no reason. What do you mean why they killed you? When I meet those three there will be more than hell to pay, Hinata yelled out as she glared at Naruto causing him to flinch. When Hinata realized that she had just yelled at Naruto and for no reason she began to tear up. The spontaneous puke moments. I got my ninja ID too, it's right Itamari began, but was cut off by the sound of someone throwing up. Naruto whipped his head round as his mating instincts were kicking in. He looked at Hinata who was currently being sick in a nearby bin. Naruto and the others quickly rushed to her as Naruto checked her over and held her hair back as she continued to puke. When she was finished she looked pale and her eyes half-lidded as she showed the classic I'm sick look. They were both signs of pregnancy he had yet to experience, the others including Pumsing. Flashback end. Naruto began to panic as he thought of a Pumsing Hinata attacking him for no reason. He'd be a dead man, the shy ones were always the more violent in these situations. Before Naruto could panic and start out on his search for a cup to protecting himself from Hinata's most likely man-removing attacks, he felt a dark yet amused aura make itself known in the area as Shinigami made another of his dark holes to nowhere and reared his skeletal face out of it. Naruto gave the death god a warning glance as he glared a little at not being in the know of what was to come. "Why the hell didn't you tell me Hinata was pregnant?" Naruto shouted as Shinigami gave a dark chuckle, but coughed a little as he choked on the thick laces of killing intent being released by Naruto. "Actually, Gaki, if you didn't notice, right before you left last time, we did warn you. We also told you your mother was alive. I guess you didn't catch it," Shinigami said as Naruto stared a little as he thought it over. "Anyway, these two have been dying to see you ever since," Shinigami said as two Shunshuns entered the room, one a bright gold, the other a deep red. Two women jumped out of them at the same time and glumped Naruto from either side. Naruto stood in place as both impacts evened the others out. If it wasn't for his edgy state, he probably would have collapsed underneath himself. Kami and Yami were squeezing themselves to him as they congratulated him. "Congratulations, Naruto-kun, have you thought of a name yet?" Kami asked excitedly as Yami giggled and was already secretly working the buttons on his pants. Kami noticed but said nothing as the two worked as a team, one distracting the other detracting, that is. "I am not sure yet, I've only just been informed, I really have no idea," Naruto thought as he drifted off into space as Shinigami noticed the two goddesses working together. He sighed as he left through his little vortex. "Damn it, and I wanted to congratulate the boy too, but obviously not like those two want to," Shinigami thought with a perverted chuckle as he went to a different universe, planning on sneaking into the women's locker rooms, turning invisible so no one would notice. Being Shinigami was good. Naruto was brought out of his thoughts as he added the feeling of a soft tongue swirling around his man while another was licking up and down the length of his shaft, her hands playing with his S. Naruto looked down and wondered when both goddesses had removed both his trousers and his underwear. Naruto sat down on a chair that seemed to have just appeared there from nowhere as both girls hungrily took turns in bobbing up and down Naruto's shaft. Naruto added as he felt two soft envelope around his member as Yami began moving her S up and down, caressing Naruto's soldier with each movement. Kami, meanwhile, was lying across Naruto's chest as she began ing on the tip of Naruto's, while Naruto positioned her drenched woman over his head as he ate her out. Kami ate into Naruto's as she doubled her efforts. Yami craned her neck down as she too began licking and flicking the tip of Naruto's rod with her tongue as the two goddesses' tongues battled it out for dominance over Naruto's. Yami continued her tighting as she also ravaged Naruto's member. Eventually Naruto had enough as he was about to release his seed, but before he could, both Kami and Yami stopped momentarily as Kami positioned herself over Naruto's member. Naruto didn't see any of this coming before it was too late. Kami impaled herself on Naruto's shaft as Naruto shot his seed into her womb. When Naruto felt this, he drove forward and bit Kami on her neck. When Naruto had released half of his seed, Kami got up quickly as Yami drove herself downward. Naruto started spraying her inside too. Naruto brought his neck up and sank his teeth into Yami's neck as he mate marked her too. When Naruto stopped releasing, he noticed both of the women were still coming down from their climaxes from when Naruto mate marked them. "Why?" Naruto asked in a shocked voice as he couldn't understand it. Kami was the first to react as she shuffled over and bit his bottom lip, purring affectionately. Naruto was more confused than even, he looked down and saw Yami kissing his chest. What just happened and why?" Naruto asked as Kami giggled. "Well, we wanted to congratulate you, we also hope to be impregnated along with wanting to become your mates. If you didn't like us, then you wouldn't have mate marked us both. You see, the alpha only mate marks people he wants in his harem. It appears you want us in your harem," Kami said as she continued to latch onto his bottom lip, licking it attentively as she continued to bite down softly. Naruto blushed as he rubbed her cheek. He felt so weirded out that he had basically just had a threesome with two of the greatest beings in existence and that they told him they wanted his children along with wanting to be with him. Yami sensed this and kissed his cheek. "We know you may feel a little uncomfortable being with us, granted we are the powerfulest beings in existence and we have the power to end the world, so I guess it's normal to feel a little threatened by us, but know that we have watched you all of your life and we had fallen in love with you a long time ago and that we would do anything to see your happiness," Yami said as Kami nodded happily as she nuzzled into the crook of his neck. Naruto smiled as he knew his reasons for mate marking them were justified. After all, he felt as if it were instinct to mate mark them, as if he already knew they cared for him and would make him happy. After all, Naruto wouldn't mate mark someone who would be bad for him or would try and hurt him or his mates. "But because I'm in my dreamscape, wouldn't that mean that I technically just jizzed in my pants?" Naruto asked as both Kami and Yami giggled. "No, you see, the state you're in now is called a solid state, where you are just an entirety of what you really are. Anything that happens here is carried on to your physical body." An example of that is your powers. We gave you the physical, mental and spiritual bonuses given to your entirety were passed on to your physical body, so, when you inside of us, you actually inside of us, and we could become pregnant because of it, Kami explained as Naruto nodded in understanding. Great, more mouths to feed, Naruto thought with anime-style tears, although in the inside he didn't mind that thought at all. Kami and Yami began to fade out of existence as they began to leave Naruto. We will see you someday, my love, but right now we are needed, both Kami and Yami said before they faded. Naruto too began to fade as he realized he was waking up. The Narutoverse CHUNIN exam rooms, Naruto's and Ko's bedroom. Naruto woke up suddenly as he realized he hadn't had the best night's sleep. He was still very tired and unnerved about all of this new information. The fact that Hinata was pregnant, that two gods were now his mates, and that his newly discovered mom would kill him on sight wasn't helping his stress. Naruto was embraced by Ino as she hugged him to her, worriedly as the others copied her actions as they too noticed he was awake. Naruto-kun, how do you feel about all of this? Ino asked worriedly. Naruto achieved a nervous smile as he had already thought for quite a while about this subject during the plane of non-existence, or as some refer it as, limbo. Well, it's surprising, but I knew when me and Hinata had SV that there would be the possibility of a pregnancy. I guess I was in the state of mind that my first time wouldn't achieve pregnancy, although I should have known better. To be honest, I'd love to be a dad, I just don't know if it's my time, or if Hinata would want this at such an early age. We may all be over the age of 19, but she and I are still physically 12, even though we don't seem to have underdeveloped fully, Naruto said with a blush as the girls nodded understandably. You may not feel ready, but we know you're ready, Naruto-kun. All your life you have grown up beaten and unloved by most, it would only be natural if you wanted your children to grow up with a better life than you had. Shion said as Naruto smiled as he knew it was true. Both Haku and Genzi placed a hand on his shoulder as they backed up Shion's words. And Naruto, we may look younger and feel younger, but our minds and morals remain as they were when we were in our past bodies. I think I speak for all of us when I say that we're ready to become mothers, Tenten said as Naruto smiled at her. That took a load off of his mind, at least they were okay with it. Now all he had to worry about was Hinata, his family, and the two movers and shakers of the universe. So he should be relaxed, huh? Hinata was still asleep, she had fallen unconscious at the same time as Naruto did. The girls almost follow in her example, but they held themselves together. Naruto was just lying there, enjoying Ino and Tenten caress his face lovingly. Naruto purred at the contact as he found himself drifting off again. He felt someone's body move up his body and then hot lips making contact with his own. Tsunade had leant in and kissed him so he would remain awake. Naruto smiled as he laughed a little at her actions. But before he could return the favor, he heard Hinata yawning cutely as she purred with her ears twitching and her tails flickering about. Naruto-kun, Hinata mumbled as she rubbed her eyes, and then her eyes shot open as the realization hit her about last night and how she was pregnant with Naruto's child or children. She looked at Naruto and then latched onto him as she purred soundly as Naruto felt warm water drench his chest. Naruto looked down and steadily asked. Hinata, are you okay? Naruto asked as Hinata looked up into his eyes, loving affection being reflected off of her sparkly passionate lavender orbs. Hinata nodded briefly and shot up and kissed him passionately as he felt her tears continue to travel down her pale face. I'm perfect, Naruto-kun, this is one of the happiest moments of my life, being pregnant with your child, Hinata answered truthfully as Naruto smiled and kissed her again as the two stayed there for a while in their loving embrace. There came a knock at their door several minutes later as Naruto groaned in annoyance and being interrupted. Shizune went to answer the door as Naruto and Hinata quickly conversed. Do you think we should tell either of our families yet? Naruto asked as Hinata shook her head. I think we should tell them after the Chunin exams. Hinata explained as Naruto hit a realization. Actually, Hinata, I'm pulling you out of the Chunin exams, you're pregnant and I couldn't live with myself if my child got hurt because I allowed you to partake in the Chunin exams. Naruto spoke as Hinata nodded in acceptance, albeit a little sadly. Naruto kissed her forehead sweetly as he took all the previous sadness away. Come on, I want to see my cousins, I can't wait to see their faces. Naruto said with an excited chuckle as Hinata smiled as the group got out of bed, showered, got dressed and ready. The group left their room as they saw a bored-looking group of ninja who were loafing around on the nearby benches, laying on their backs. The Uzumaki group had been waiting quite a while. Well, if we knew you'd take this long, then we'd have already gone to go get breakfast, Moku said with a tick mark above her left eye. Naruto smiled nervously as he rubbed the back of his head. Haha, sorry about that, we were discussing a few things, Naruto said with a tint to his voice that he knew something that they didn't. Arashi got a perverted grin as he nudged Naruto with his elbow. Were you discussing as a group? Arashi asked and was immediately smacked across the back of his head via fuming female cousins. Naruto grew a blush as he thought about it. No, I promise, Naruto said as he shielded himself from the anti-group. The group eased at that. Hinata was being more shy than usual as she stood behind Naruto, shielding her stomach from prying eyes. Sorry about that guys anyway, I'll catch you all up to breakfast, I have to take Hinata out of the matches first. Naruto said as the group cocked an eyebrow at that. Why are you taking her out of the exam? Naruto-kun Moku asked as Naruto racked his brain for an excuse or a reason. Hinata-chan has to leave because a very important meeting that the Hyuga main branch family must attend to has popped up. And Hinata is the Hyuga heiress, so she is demanded to be there. Naruto said as the others nodded in acceptance as he patted himself on the back for his quick thinking. Well, I'll see the rest of you later then. I'll escort Hinata to her compound while the rest of you have breakfast and stuff. Naruto said as he held Hinata's hand and walked her out of the room, waving goodbye to the others. When Naruto had gone, Arashi scratched his chin as he thought a few things through. Naruto was acting a little weird, like he knew something the rest of us didn't, and maybe shouldn't. He pointed his finger in the air and struck a heroic pose. I will find out anyway, he shouted as his eyes shone. The others looked at him, their eyes ticking a little at the boy's socially unusual behavior. Is he always like that? Temari asked as she saw a little of Rock Lee in Naruto's cousin Arashi. She shuddered at the thought. Every now and then he is determined to do something, basically anything. The outbursts occur at random, and he literally won't stop until he feels his task or tasks have been completed. Akane said as she watched her cousin run off. Where are you going? She shouted to him as he looked back a little to answer her. I'll be back later, he shouted in response as Moku sighed and face-palmed. Boys, they never answer your question, Moku ranted as the other girls nodded a little to back her up, some giggling as they found it rather funny. But Arashi. Now to spy on my blonde cousin, Arashi thought as he sneaked through the bushes, following Naruto and Hinata, keeping his distance. But Naruto and Hinata were walking in a comfortable silence as they held hands. Their destination was the Namikaze mansion. Hinata had told Hiashi of her and Naruto, and he had accepted it finally, albeit a little reluctantly, not because Naruto was seen as a demon or because he was an orphan, but because he was a rebel. Hiashi knew Naruto to be no demon, after all, he was a clan head, but he hated the idea of rebels, he hated the idea of cocky youths, and most of all, he hated rule breakers or benders. All in all, he was one of those grumpy old men who hated change. The conversation had started out as Hinata informing Hiashi of their marriage, but ended in a way not even Hinata had thought of. Hinata thought back to the conversation the two had. Flashback Hyuga compound, Hiashi's office. Hinata stood in Hiashi's office as the two conversed. Hinata looked a little ticked off as Hiashi stared at her with an emotionless, yet questionable look. Naruto was told by Hinata to stay outside, as he being there might ruin the two's chances of being together. Besides, she had to deal with her father on her own. You expect me to allow you and the Uzumaki boy to marry? Hiashi asked as Hinata nodded and crossed her arms. Hiashi sighed as he knew a day like this would come. Hinata, you're too young, the only reason you want this is because of your hormones. To you, Naruto is the one, correct? Hiashi asked as Hinata nodded in a determined fashion. Wrong, you simply have a schoolyard crush on the boy, in about a week or so it will be gone and replaced into a new one. It's just your hormones acting up due to you becoming a teenager, and all. Hiashi spoke as he sighed at the look Hinata gave him. It is not a schoolyard crush, I have loved him ever since I started the academy, which is about 5 years. Me and Naruto have been together for 4 years, and if 4 years of time being spent together wasn't love, then what is? Hinata said as she lied about them being together, but knew in her past body, it was sort of true. And then you are just young and confused, and since when have you had a boyfriend? Hiashi spoke the last part with a little surprise, as he always saw his daughter as just too shy to commit herself to a serious relationship. Hinata mentally eeped a little as she thought of an excuse that would leave Hiashi without any more questions, but at the same time, making the lie a believable one. Well, we kept it a secret because I didn't want the elders to know of us, and that kind of includes you too, father, Hinata said as she tried to pick her words wisely, as she didn't want to upset her father. Hiashi nodded sagely as he understood. Albeit he did still not agree with his eldest daughter marrying so soon, and to someone she most likely just had a crush on, or so he thought. You must understand, daughter, this isn't love, this is called growing up, trying to show yourself as independent. You see other parents together with their life partner, and so you believe the best way to show yourself as an adult is to act like us, am I wrong? Hiashi spoke with a wise demeanor as he opened his eyes lazily. Yes, you are wrong, Hinata shouted, a little tired of his mind games. You don't understand anything about me, you just presume I'm some shallow child trying to grow up by being like everyone else, Hinata shouted as she grit her teeth in frustration, another side effect of pregnancy. Hiashi was taken aback a little as he had never seen her daughter so angry and willing to fight before. Might I add, emotions you are displaying now are common signs of a hormonal teenager, Hiashi asked as he watched Hinata grow angrier and angrier with each of his retorts. Just like I said, you're acting the way you are because you're. Pregnant Hinata screamed as she interrupted Hiashi, whose eyes had bugged out and shone a pure white. Shock and surprise radiating from his expression. His body completely still and stiff. Hinata smacked her mouth as it only just dawned on her of what she had done. If Hiashi didn't take this well, then Naruto was going to be chased, hunted and mobbed by the entire Hyuga family. Not both of their own separate opinions, but because Hiashi said so. After taking it all in, Hiashi kept his head down as tension began to rise, Kai being emitted, a calm before the storm feeling being emitted from the elder Hyuga's body, his face still not visible. "Bring me Naruto Uzumaki," Hiashi spoke as it was blatantly visible that he was trying to swallow his emotions. A second later, a Hyuga guard shunshined from behind Hiashi and into the garden area where Naruto was, shunshining the two back to Hiashi's private office. Hiashi glared at the boy as it sent shivers down Naruto's spine, right to the very core. Naruto was a little confused, normally Hiashi ignored him. Naruto crept slowly towards Hinata as he felt safe nearest her. "Stop where you tread, Uzumaki," Hiashi screamed as he slammed both of his hands onto his desk, making a deathly thump echo around the room. Naruto latched onto Hinata as he began to cry comical anime tears. "Be scary," Naruto shouted as Hinata shielded him from Hiashi glaring at him all the while. "I'll show you, scary brat," Hiashi screamed as he was about to leap over the desk and beat the boy silly. But before he could, Hinata sent him a death glare not even Medusa could beat. Hiashi stopped his movements as he sat down, his attention slowly moving from Hinata to the bundle of blonde hair buried in her bosom. Hiashi continued to glare at the boy as he hated the fact that not only had Hinata become pregnant so early in life, but because she had lost her purity to the rebel of Konoha himself. "I will make a deal with you, Uzumaki." Hiashi spoke as Naruto quivered, looking up, making eye contact with the obviously still angry Hyuga. "I will pay you good money, buy you a nice house somewhere, and give you some clan scrolls if you leave my eldest daughter alone and tell no one of the child you two created. The child will live with us in the Hyuga clan and will be raised by me. You may see her, but only when I say so. After all, anyone could be watching." Hiashi spoke as Naruto's scared figure fell as he began to get very angry with the Hyuga clan head. "How dare you!" Naruto shouted as Hinata gasped at the idea, the very idea crushing her. "How dare you offer goods and money in return for my Hinata?" The sentence angered the elder Hyuga as he growled. "How dare you say when I can and cannot see my child or children?" Naruto shouted as Hiashi began to feel himself being beaten in his little mind game. "How dare you say I shouldn't be able to be with Hinata or whether I should or shouldn't be allowed to marry her?" Naruto shouted as his rage became apparent by his red eyes with black slits. Hiashi thought it over mentally as he considered what was going on. "Well, I can't really say it's just a crush anymore. The evidence is piling up in their relationship being legitimate, and I guess it isn't really fair on Naruto. He may be a rebel and an unworthy candidate for Hinata's affections, but he has a right to see his children, and he seems sincere in wanting to be with Hinata. And for their eventual children." Hiashi's eyes flashed an evil white as he grinned to himself, scarring the shit out of Naruto. "But that doesn't mean I won't make his life hell." Hiashi finished his thought as he looked up at Naruto's pale face, smiling innocently. "I have decided to agree to your marriage, but on a few conditions." Hiashi spoke as Hinata glomped and kissed Naruto, who was still stiff as he had noticed that Fuchodic grin and knew the elder Hyuga had something in stock for him. "My conditions are that I may see the child or children anytime, anywhere." Hiashi spoke as Hinata and Naruto nodded, the condition being reasonable. "I may see Hinata whenever I want." Again, the pair nodded as it was again reasonable. "I may spoil the child or children." Hiashi spoke as he mentally chuckled a little. The two nodded, albeit with a sweat drop. "And, lastly, I get to stop you two from getting it on ever again by shoe-shining to you when you even try," Hiashi said, as both Naruto and Hinata broke out in objections, with blushes on their faces. Hiashi quickly and skillfully pulled out a camera and took a picture of the two's faces, slipping the undeveloped picture into his top pocket for safekeeping. "The father's unfair humor priceless," Hiashi said as he grinned at the angry looks of the two teens. Hinata pouted as she grabbed Naruto by the wrists and dragged him away. "If that is all, father, we have to go. I'll give you more details later." Hinata said as Hiashi nodded, and as soon as the two left, sneaked into the dark room, planning something special with the picture in his top pocket. He let out a maniacal giggle as foam poured from his mouth. He stopped immediately as he realized what he must look like, shifting his eyes from left to right, he realized no one was near, he sighed in relief as he went back to his evil plotting. Oh. Flashback end. Hinata growled a little at how her father was so annoying and how he only acted like that towards her and Hanabi. Naruto still had shivers, he was still thinking about that evil grin, knowing it wasn't a good sign. The two were making their way to the Namikaze mansion, as that is where the group had agreed to meet the day prior if any of them got split up. The mansion was on the horizon as the two sighed happily at seeing it, the betrothed couple walking hand in hand, Hinata's head resting on Naruto's shoulder the entire way. Oh. Oh. Hyuga compound roof above Hiyashi's office. Arashi had been sitting there, a shocked visage still attached to his face as his jaw was open wide. He had been listening through the vents and had heard the entire conversation. He was shook up and at the same time, highly excited. "I'm going to be an uncle," he whispered in disbelief as he stood up and smiled brightly. "I'm going to be an uncle," Arashi shouted as he ran back to the Namikaze compound. Little did he know that he would bring a downfall to Naruto's now easygoing lifestyle. Oh. Oh. Back with Naruto and Hinata. The two were at the front doors of the mansion. Naruto opened the door to the mansion. He was surprised when all he saw was darkness. He switched the lights on and was scared completely to death when around 100 people jumped out and yelled surprise. Kushina ran up and hugged her son as Naruto blushed lightly from embarrassment. Hinata giggled as she saw both satisfied from being with his family to being embarrassed from her uncool actions. Kushina finally let go and smiled as wide as she could. Naruto was still confused as to why so many people were in his family's house, throwing a party for him out of the blue seemed odd. What's all this for?" Naruto asked with a little startled confusion as he gave an unsure chuckle to follow. "Well, you being reunited with the family silly," Kushina said as she giggled a little. "After all, we didn't get to celebrate properly when we first met," Kushina explained as the crowd nodded. Naruto noticed a few among the crowd, Sarutobi. Hiyashi, who had gathered not to tell the crowd about Hinata's pregnancy until the couple decided to do so themselves. Hanabi, who came with Hiyashi and was giving Naruto funny looks that made him feel uneasy and caused him to shift and shield him from her view. And all of his cousins, aunts, uncles and the rest of his oversized family. Naruto smiled as he was hugged by each of his mates in turn before the night's festivities began. It had been an entire hour nearly as Naruto sat on one of the couches, cuddling up to his mates as he sipped from a glass of orange juice or so he thought. Little did they know that Hanabi had been spiking his drink, pouring large amounts of high-quality vodka into his drink, which went unnoticed due to Hanabi's special jutsu she had been working on for this very occasion, her plan coming into play. The plan being very simple, get Naruto drunk, get him away from prying eyes, convince him to come help her, sit him down, and try to get him to pick her over her sister. After all, it would help if he were drunk. Hanabi's mind hadn't quite figured out why so many other girls were acting like Hinata towards Naruto, although she knew she didn't like it at all either. Naruto asked for another drink, she quickly poured some vodka into his drink, laced some of her chakra into, and waited for Hinata to pick it up and give it to him. Naruto began to keep drinking, little did he know that the laced chakra would make him even thirstier over time, meaning he would continue drinking heavily, if a little too steady for her liking. "Naruto-kun, you really should stop drinking, you've gone through 15 cups of orange juice now," Tsunade suggested as the others nodded. Naruto giggled a little as he placed the empty cup down. "What, I didn't even like orange juice," Naruto giggled as the group immediately realized something was wrong. "My god, he's drunk," Shizune shout whispered as the others nodded in surprise. Hinata burst out laughing at Naruto's blushing cheeks as he continued to laugh at the orange juice cup, not knowing why made him laugh even more. "Well, I guess we should sober him up," Ino suggested, but all thoughts were put aside when Naruto snuggled into Shizune's lap. The group giggled as they watched him try to rest, his fox ears showing as they twitched from the sounds. Hanabi growled as this is not how she planned it. She expected the group to panic and run to find the culprit, leaving Naruto unguarded and vulnerable to suggestions. But here he was, incapacitated, sleeping on one of the girls' lap. "Leave the raiment to cook, no it won't burn," Naruto mumbled as the group broke out into even more laughter, driving Hanabi up the wall as she was sick of them enjoying her Naruto. She was about to go up to Naruto and drag him away, but before she could even take one step forward, the doors burst open, a tired and sweaty Arashi walking in tiredly, but with great stride. "Arashi, where have you been?" Kushina shouted as she glared at her son. Arashi smiled a large smile as he chuckled a little. "I've been running around town screaming the good news," Arashi shouted as the crowd gave him a questioning look. "What good news?" Kushina asked her nephew. Arashi smiled again as he didn't stop to think about why she didn't know and that the reason would most likely because Naruto and Hinata didn't want anyone to know yet. "I'm going to be an uncle," Arashi shouted as Naruto's mates and Hiyashi's eyes went wide. The two groups shook their heads and shook their hands, trying to tell him to shut up. The crowd's eyes went wide as they were very surprised. "Why, who's having a child who's in our family?" Kushina asked in a demanding tone as no one had told her. "Why, Naruto and Hinata, of course," Arashi smiled, but then it faltered as the mental switch in his head clicked as he realized that if Kushina didn't already know, then they either wanted to save the reveal for a better event or they didn't want people to know yet. Hinata's face was mortified as she began to turn pale and sweat from both the embarrassment and sheer pressure being sent her way by the entire crowd's shocked eyes. Naruto took this time to intervene. "What are we calling the kids anyway?" Hinata after finishing his sentence, he promptly passed out, leaving a very angry Kushina staring at Hinata with daggers in her eyes. Hinata looked down and she began to feel like crying. The entire atmosphere went from peace and laughter to awkward silence and tension. "What just happened?" Arashi asked. "Oh. Oh. Amik. Naruto ahhh, it's a squid. Not a squid. You know, but it's clearly not a squid. Squid, no, I'm a full squid. Naruto plus Hinata Nuo. You know, my god, so stupid, I'm leaving." The party had mostly cleared out after Arashi's outburst, the embarrassment and unease being radiated from the room itself. Kushina was literally gritting her teeth as she mulled over that piece of information. Normally a mother who hears about her son's pregnant girlfriend blames the son, but Kushina was way too overprotective to even take that into consideration. To her, Naruto was her one and only son, and she knew he had been treated badly, her motherly instincts telling her to protect him. Although she had no idea what she was protecting him from with her current actions, but she knew deep down that it was justified, or so she thought. Naruto had awoken and had sobered almost instantly from feeling the thick laces of anger directed at Hinata. Kushina made her way over to the two as Naruto protected Hinata, who hid behind him for protection. Hiashi alerted himself to the situation, ready to act if it got out of hand. Hanabi didn't know what to do, she loved her sister dearly, and even though she was trying to steal Naruto from her, she didn't want her sister hurt, and by the look on Kushina's face, it promised just that. Kushina stopped as she tried to peer over Naruto's shoulder, who hadn't yet realized why she was so angry at Hinata. Kushina continued to glare at what little of Hinata she could see. Hinata was terrified, she knew her father would be bad, but she didn't count on Kushina being so violent. "How dare you!" Kushina finally shouted out as Hinata flinched a little under the stern tone of her voice. Naruto took a look of surprise as he had no idea what was going on, he was about to interject, but Kushina paid no notice as she continued. "How dare you violate my son?" she demanded once again, killing intent rolling off of her in waves. Naruto's eyebrows raised in surprise as his face took a paler tint to it. "But mom, I have a harem, that kinda means I'm going to have V once in a while," Naruto tried to calm her as he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he shouted at his mom, then there was a possibility of her going into a depression again, after all, she was still mentally unfit. And if he let this continue, then Hinata would be hurt more than he would care to stand. But nothing, she knew she should have waited until you were married, but no, she's too damn desperate. Kushina spat as Hinata quivered and clung tighter to Naruto, who was getting frustrated at Kushina for talking down to Hinata like that, the insults being quite offensive to him, and if it was anyone else saying them, they'd most likely be running for their lives. "And now look, she's ruined your life by getting pregnant," Kushina shouted again, convinced by her words. That was the last straw for Naruto. "What the hell do you mean ruin my life? Hinata and the others are the best thing that's ever happened to me, it was V with consent, so how did she violate me? And if you had thought to ask me, you'd know I was happy that she was pregnant," Naruto shouted as Kushina stared wide-eyed at the retort. She knew he was right, yet why did she feel her actions were still justified? But you're going to have to take time off to look after her and the baby, you both may be 19 in body and mind, but you're still 15-year-olds who need to grasp the life of a ninja," Kushina said as she brought up some valid points. "That is correct, we may have to get used to the muscle memory of our new bodies, but I can safely say that if we're strong enough to take down a Sannin with hardly any muscle memory training, then we're strong enough to take some time off to raise a child. We may be 15, but I assure you we are more mature than we look, enough so to bring a child into the world correctly, that is," Naruto said as he tried to reason with his overprotective mother. "But Naruto, by what people are telling me you could be one of the greatest ninja known to the world, I don't want you to become weak and allow yourself or your loved ones to die because you rushed into an intimate relationship too soon. Having a baby so soon will hinder you maybe in 3 or 4 years' time, but now it's just too much responsibility for two people." Kushina tried to reason with her son. "The baby won't hinder me at all. I'll still train and be near the child. And it won't be just me and Hinata looking after the child, there's Ino, Tenten, Temari, Tsunade, Isaribi, Shion, Kurenai, Anko, Kyubi, Shizune, Haku and Genzi, who will also look after our child, her children," Naruto said as he blushed a little at the thought of miniature versions of himself and his mates running around and how such mini-me's could be brought into the world. Kushina thought about it, 14 people looking after a child would be easy, they'd still be able to train and would take shifts throughout the child's upbringing. Kushina also knew that a few of the girls named had an advanced idea on how to bring up a child, namely Tsunade and Shizune, as they were both Metnin. Kushina had to admit she wasn't as worried as she once was, but for some reason she still held on to her justification for disliking Hinata. Although she calmed enough not to violently assault her, she would still try and get some satisfaction, some sick satisfied out of being the mother of the boy who impregnated her. Meaning she would try her hardest to make her life hell. She knew to others it seemed out of the norm and that even she was a little worried over her sanity. She pondered over seeing a psychiatrist before she did anything drastic. Although she knew she had lost the argument at hand and that she was even a little happy that she wasn't going to admit she was wrong. Or at least, she hoped not to. Kushina was happy she lost the argument because at least she knew Naruto was happy and that her accusations weren't the truth. Mom, Naruto said softly as the woman in question looked up. It'd mean a lot to me if you apologize to Hinata for the accusations and pressure you have put her through. Naruto asked as Hinata still held him tight, not wanting to let go of her only barrier between crying. Kushina cringed mentally at the thought. She may not like Hinata, but she wouldn't hurt her son like this. She didn't want Hinata or Naruto separated, she didn't want the baby to be non-existent. Hell, she loved the thought of being a grandmother. She had just brought upon herself a mentality that made her dislike Hinata as a person. She knew that it may seem unjustified to others and that maybe she was in the wrong. She just didn't want to swallow her pride. Although, for her son, she did. I am sorry, Hinata-san. Kushina said with as much conviction she could muster, although Naruto saw through the false expression and knew his mother still disliked her and still kept the same opinion of her. Hinata didn't know what to say, she was nearly paralyzed with guilt, fear and hurt. Guilt because she had doubted if she should have had V with Naruto when she did. Fear because she started to believe Kushina was right with what she said and that she couldn't defend against someone she had wronged, or so she believed she had wronged. And hurt because the mother of the man she loved so dearly seemed to hate her as a person. Apology accepted, Hinata forced out in a softer, more timid voice than her usual voice. Kushina tried not to grit her teeth at her words. Apology accepted. Oh, you'll pay for that one, Kushina thought as she mentally grinned. She wouldn't do anything malicious to the girl, just something to get a buzz out of some form of final victory. Thank you. Now can we please never bring this up again if you'll excuse me, I'd like to be alone with Hinata-chan for a while. Naruto said as he escorted Hinata out of the room, who clung to him like he was her lifeline. The other girls nodded as they retired to the living room outside the main bedroom. With Naruto and Hinata. Naruto had taken Hinata into the master bedroom, he sat her down as she finally opened up and cried into his chest. Naruto stayed with her as she cried, soothing her sobs as much as he could with his touch. When she had stopped, she just laid herself in his arms, latching to him as much as she could. Her tail wrapping around his abdomen as she made herself feel as safe as possible. Naruto sighed as he laid down with her on top of him, Hinata already falling asleep, no words needed to be said, Naruto would support her, protect and love her and the child. That was all Hinata needed to know. But Naruto's harem. Tsunade opened the door to the living room so she could allow Hinata and Naruto some privacy. After all, what just happened was a touchy subject and required the fewest amount of people to be there for her. As they entered the living room, they noticed Arashi getting beaten around by Naruto's cousins, including an extremely pissed Moku, who was pissed because she wanted to find out this information in a happy environment. The girls who entered grinned evilly as they joined in on the beating. Arashi's screams would be heard around the village for hours on end. None of the villagers had enough guts to knock on the door and ask them to quiet down, fearing that if they did, they'd end up like the one screaming. But Sasuke had been awake for about an hour, he had been interrogated ever since he had woken up and had spilled every last piece of information he could. Even going so far as to admitting to his homosexuality, which caused the interrogators to laugh at how weak-minded the ninja was. Even genin were taught to last longer than an hour. But this Uchiha had spilled it all. Not just the information they were after, but private information which the interrogators didn't even ask for. Is that everything? Ibiki asked as Inoichi placed the Uchiha under a control jutsu, telling him whether or not the Uchiha was lying. The Sasuke cried as he clung to his body that had been tortured for an entire hour. Granted, what they did was over the top, the Uchiha should have still lasted longer than he did. Ibiki had cut bits of his flesh off, added salt to the wounds, and then added a highly reactive acid that once it is mixed with the salt grains, caused them to explode into tiny hot shards, embedding them deeper within the Uchiha's body. After Ibiki had done that a few dozen times, he had tried a little mental trauma, forcing Sasuke to eat foul, vile and utterly disturbing items. Sasuke had been forced to eat both animal and human feces, mixed in together. The which the Uchiha was forced to do after being placed under a control jutsu that made sure the user was aware of his actions, remaining onto his senses, but unable to stop what he was physically doing. Of course, this could only be done under restraint conditions. Sasuke had been forced to eat animals' genitals, which he passed out during consumption. When he awoke, he squealed like a schoolgirl. Is he telling the truth? Inoichi Ibiki asked as Inoichi nodded with an amused yet slightly disturbed smirk on his face. Good, now kill him. Ibiki said as he ordered an Anbunin to kill him. The Hokage had told them after he had been interrogated that he should be killed due to information only the Hokage and his informants should know. Sasuke gasped as he heard that, his chakra flared as he used the last of his chakra and the chakra Orochimaru had given him to cut his bindings. The Anbu jumped back as to keep a safe distance. Sasuke went through a dozen hand seals until he called out his jutsu, focusing all his chakra into his hands. Ninjutsu unknown jutsu of the snake Sannin Sasuke shouted as the Anbu quickly upped their guard. Sasuke released his jutsu as a purple smoke clouded the air, not covering Sasuke's body entirely, just a little. When the smoke cleared nothing had happened, Sasuke's eyes rolled up into the back of his head as he passed out. Ibiki and the Anbu chuckled at such weakness. Ibiki quickly beheaded him as he went about his gruesome lifestyle. Ibiki wasn't an evil man, but he did what he had to for his village. As do all ninja. Did you see his petty attempts in trying to use a jutsu he ran out of chakra right in the middle of it all? Ibiki said as his fellow torturers gave an amused nod, repressing the slight mirth they had at the idea. Should we inform Hokage-sama of what the Uchiha has told us? This information may become increasingly helpful in getting rid of everything attached to the late Snake Sannin. Inoichi asked Ibiki as the bear-sized man nodded his head slowly as the majority of the group left, leaving only a few nin behind, so they may dispose of the body properly. In Sasuke's case, being burnt then flushed down the drain. Konoha doesn't look too kindly upon traitors. Oh. With Naruto. Naruto was still holding on to Hinata as she latched onto him, not wanting to let go. At times like this, he was grateful for going back in time. He had so much time to mess about and catch up with people. He had felt that his life as a ninja had kept him away from what made him truly happy people. Because of his drive to become Hokage, the time he had to spend with others also lessened greatly, as he was almost always training so he could reach his goal. Now that he looks back on it, he realized that he'd missed out on a lot of fun. Sure, at the moment things weren't all sunshine and rainbows, but this drama only made them stronger as emotionally mature humans. You only learned from experiences like these, and even though it was a bummer, he was glad for it because he was taking both the good and the bad from the world, yin and yang. Hinata sniffed a few times before she snuggled a little closer, she sighed happily as she wrapped one of her legs around his, getting more comfortable. Naruto sensed she wasn't as sad anymore, so he cracked a small smile. Hinata knew Naruto's mother didn't care for her much, but just like Naruto, she planned on changing her opinion. After all, Naruto did it a hell of a lot, why couldn't she? With one last sigh she pulled out a game controller. "Wanna play some Modern Warfare 2 with me?" Hinata said as she pulled an identical controller out from underneath herself. Naruto's sweat dropped. "That was a little out of the blue, don't you think, Haim?" Naruto asked as he grabbed the controller nonetheless. Hinata squealed as she snuggled in closer. "I'm gonna kick your ass," Hinata said as Naruto tickled her sides. "We'll see then, won't we?" Naruto said with a grin. "And I'm allowed to do things from out of the blue, I'm pregnant," Hinata said as she used her soon-to-be excuse for everything. Naruto sighed in defeat as he knew that he'd be hearing that a lot more in the not-so-distant future. Oh. Downstairs. Kushina and Kushana had gone out to town, Kushana deciding she would get Kushina away from Hinata for a while, just to let the young teens heal from the words. In the dining room, the group of girls were extremely bored. They had thought about going outside and training, but they couldn't be bothered. They had thought about checking up on the two upstairs, but they didn't want to intrude on anything. Haku decided she'd go and check up on Zabuza. Haku, Genzi and Anko decided they'd want to go and do that, after all, they had nothing better to do. As soon as they opened the door, they heard a sound barrier rip and the noises from within begin to assault their ears. "This game is broken, I swear to God," Zabuza shouted as he gripped onto his controller some more. The sounds of his character dying again only fueled his rage. "What, you hacker, how are you doing that?" Zabuza screeched as he was close to looking like a 10-year-old child. In the background you hear someone talking through the headset. "Shut up, little kid, go play some Mario Kart if you can't handle it," the anonymous person calmly said through the mic. This only ignited Zabuza's short fuse. "Yeah, what are you going to do?" you shouted as the girls within the room sweat dropped as Zabuza still hadn't noticed them. "I'll come round your house and your mom," the person through the mic said as he laughed to himself, taking joy from Zabuza's anger. "This is so going on, Yaochu," the boy added shortly after. "Arggh this game," Zabuza shouted out in anger as he turned his console off and looked around, a look of shock and surprise written across his face as he noticed the girls in his room. What are you doing in my room?" Zabuza asked as he asked the first question on his mind. "Do you really get that angry over a virtual simulation?" Haku asked as Zabuza sulked a little. Bottom lip pouting slightly. "I can't help it, the game's stupid," Zabuza said as he glared at the console in question. The three girls' sweat dropped at that statement. "Then why play on it? If something as trivial as a game gets you this worked up, then don't play so much of it," Anko said as Zabuza blushed in embarrassment. "Shut up," Zabuza said as he tried to defend his honor, although it was futile. "You shut up," Anko shouted as the two stared each other down. The other two just sighed and dragged a kicking and screaming Anko out of the room. "Remember our advice, Zabuza-san, don't play so much games all the time," Genzi said shyly as she only just managed to get herself noticed. Zabuza harumphed but eventually decided they were right and left to go drink some sake. It had having no friends he could go hang out with, after all, he was new and an adult, so finding friends was going to be hard for him. He decided just to socialize and see what happens. Oh. Oh. Back in the dining room. The three girls sat back down as they sat around the TV, bored out of their minds. Suddenly, Kurenai had an interesting thought. Hey Genzi-san, why don't you tell us a little about yourself? You did join the group awfully sudden. Kurenai said as the group nodded as they realized they hadn't had a chance to get to know her much. They felt a little bad, keeping her on the sidelines and all, they didn't have time to get to know her much. Sure, the younger generation knew her quite a bit from the academy, but the older group didn't. Well, my name Genzi. Genzi started with a shy blush as she realized she had said something stupid. Of course they know her name, she felt a little silly for saying it, which didn't help soothe her situation. I came to Konoha when I was younger, my mother died when I was little, so I don't know much about her, and my father died 3 years ago of a strange illness. Since then Sarutobi has been supporting me. Genzi said as a few of them felt bad for asking, the others seeing that this information no longer affected her as much as it would have a civilian. After all, you're a ninja, and ninjas have to restrict emotions, such as the death of a loved one, as best they can. I guess I grew up with not many people around me for support, Genzi said as she internally sighed and looked down a little. She knew at some point these women would know everything about her, she'd prefer to get the hard stuff out of the way first. She gulped and opened herself up, which she hadn't done in years. With no one around to support me, I had a numerous amount of mood swings and attitude changes. At first, I was quite bratty about the incident of my family's death, then I grew childish, then I grew cold and hate-filled, and then finally I settled on being shy and reserved, Genzi said as she had finally admitted to herself out loud. It wasn't a nice thing to do, but she didn't regret it. These people needed to know. As soon as I had settled on being shy, it was time for me to go to the academy. From then on, being isolated even in a social environment, I felt like I should just quit and give up. But at some point in time I noticed how the scared students used Naruto as a scapegoat. Being shy had its advantages, I could read people easily. Studying their every move instead of interacting with them was the advantage of isolation. Genzi explained as the girls looked on in interest as they wanted to hear more. They used him as a scapegoat because it could have easily been any one of them. As soon as the scapegoat is decided, the entire class will use him to help themselves grow dormant, showing themselves to be more courageous than the other. As soon as Naruto was established as the scapegoat to all their insults and abuse, the group began to grow and split into social and moral groups where they were happy with themselves as people. Genzi lectured as Tsunade nodded with wonder. My, this girl is quite smart when it comes to the human brain, and the way we think. Tsunade thought as she thought sending her to Inoichi for lessons might prove to be beneficial. Naruto stood there and took it, all of the abuse, all of the insults, the cold stares, the social isolation. I thought for sure that he was a goner, like me, but he stood up strong, he defied his own path as a scapegoat, and he proved to me that I could stop being like that too. The very day I saw Naruto Uzumaki stand up to all of those bullies was the day I finally swallowed my fear and I met Hinata, and from then we became friends. Genzi said as she smiled a little at the memory. The others looked on as they too smiled happily. They had to admit it was a really good story and it gave them a good view on what and who Genzi is as a person, both present and past. The group spent the next hour introducing themselves, their likes, dislikes, interests, hobbies and all other sorts of things. The group was getting along nicely, but there was still a hint of nervousness in the air. The group may know each other well, but being in a harem and being intimate with each other had caused the group to become a little distant with each other lately, for reasons only women could know. Naruto and Hinata have been up there a long time now. Do you think it would be safe to check up on them? Temari asked, to which the group nodded and began shuffling up the stairs. They had made it to Naruto's door, they couldn't hear any noise coming from within it, so they decided to open the door slowly. As sound as the door opened, the sound seal on the door ripped and the sounds of gunfire and explosions vibrated through the air. What the hell is this? Tsunade yelled as the group nodded fiercely as they watched a tearful Naruto getting his ass handed to him. This game's physics are broken is what it is, Naruto shouted as he sulked, although Hinata's kiss on the cheek followed by a giggle convinced him to keep on playing. So, all this time you've been playing on this video game, rather than doing something productive, Temari shouted as she was a little angered by the thought of her being bored out of her mind for around 2 whole hours while these two were comfortably playing on video games. Yeah, kinda. Naruto knew he sounded pathetic. From the looks he was getting, he knew he'd be sleeping on the settee tonight, and he wasn't wrong, unfortunately for him. Oh. Later that night. Naruto was sleeping on the downstairs settee. He had more bedrooms he could sleep in, but they said the settee, and he really didn't want to anger any of them by sleeping in a bed. Not that he was afraid of them hurting him, but it was the thought of letting them down that kept him to their word. Well, this damn Hinata and her godlike gaming, Naruto thought as he sighed. For some reason this he just wasn't comfortable. Naruto realized it must have been because he was so far away from his mates. Naruto whined out as he couldn't get comfortable, his tails not helping much either. However, at some point he had been tackled with a giggling Hinata laying atop his chest, biting his neck playfully, her tails lashing about as she showed a little of her feral side. Naruto smiled as he bear hugged her. At least it wasn't so bad. The two settled down as Naruto drifted into a well-deserved peaceful sleep. Oh. The next few days had went by quicker than the group had anticipated. They had hoped for more time to complete their catch-up training, but unfortunately for them, this year's Chunin challengers were a little bit above average. Naruto was making his way to the Chunin arena on his own, many thoughts going off in his head, some good, others not so good. He could still feel his mother's resent towards Hinata. It wasn't really something he could understand, but he did understand something was wrong with her. He'd have to see if she'd agree to get herself checked out by Ino's dad or something. Naruto wasn't just swamped by bad thoughts though, he also had thoughts to think fondly of. The idea of being a parent, the life he lived was fantastic. He felt strong enough to shrug off any threat that may cause harm to his loved ones. But, back to the bad thoughts, he couldn't help but feel like a storm was brewing, something evil twisting its way through the wind. Like it was creeping up on him. Naruto wasn't a fool, this feeling wasn't something he should dismiss so easily, it was something to prepare for. He didn't know what this feeling was, or even if it was real, all he knew is that being unprepared for anything would end badly. His only problem, what was he preparing for? Mixed feelings is the only word that could sum up Naruto's thought patterns, his need for strength to protect others, his pride on becoming a father soon, his sense of paranoia that someone or something was out to get him, and his sense of time management all led him into a spiral of what he should do and how he should do it. That's when it hit him, he was a responsible adult now, he had wives to look after, potential children to support and nurture, his clan and recent family to uphold, a village to lay his life down for, and countless friends that he needed to strengthen and interact with. He had been given this task when he had died, but the realization had hit hard. People's life literally depended on Naruto's choices in his own time management, how much time he spent doing what, and how much focus he spent on actual family life. Was he spending too much time at home? Were they spending their time selfishly? It was an odd reaction, feeling guilty for spending too much time with loved ones when he should be spending it training himself and others. Naruto passed the ever-lengthening street, shops and market stands, seeming to stretch with the road's length, almost like a jinjutsu. The weight and pressure of the situation making sense to him finally. I've gotta grow up and act more mature, Naruto thought to himself with a small smile. The thought wasn't completely unpleasant like he thought it would be, sure, he'd spend less time with his family, but it's not like he wouldn't see them or interact with them at all. Naruto quickened his pace as the street looked normal once again, a new stride in Naruto's step pronounced him as a man with an idea for change and a presence of sagely wisdom. Oh. Chunin arena. Naruto's wife stood up on the stands, watching over the other potential Chunin combatants. They weren't eyeing them down, merely sizing their skills up and their amount of chakra. They sighed in a sort of relief to find none of them were even near their level, so this examination should go about easily. The group did enjoy a good fight to help them grow, but they only came to this exam to gain the Chunin title. They never intended to have a fight last more than 5 minutes, if that. So it was a relief that none of them seemed up to par with their own level. Hinata stayed up in the stands anyway, even if she wasn't going to fight. She was going to support her husband and her fellow wives, even if she couldn't help them directly. Whispers were spreading around the arena, people betting with friends or with other clans on who would win in the fights. Naruto wasn't recognized by outside clans from other villages, so they tended not to bet on him, rather they betted on the Konoha Kunoichi who had decent academy results. They were disappointed to find out Hinata wasn't going through, as she would have been a sure bet. Rather they bet that Ino or Temari would win. Another surprising combatant was Sean, a princess from another country. Logic depicts that she would have received some pretty expensive and harsh training, so her bets were pretty loaded too. Oh. Back with Naruto. Naruto was walking through different areas of the village. It was time to put his plan into action. If you could call it a plan, that is taking Gaara's information into account. He was patrolling different areas for the hidden sound and sand invasion force. Naruto focused on his eyes and activated his Mitsukage, draining the chakra out of one eye and activating his Kontanigan in the chakra-drained eye, effectively dual-wielding his Dijutsus. Using his Mitsukage, he concealed his chakra to nothing, ensuring he wouldn't be spotted. At the same time, he used his Kontanigan's ability to sense out soul power. The village had been made aware of the situation and had been moved to the HOKAGE mountain safe house to secure that no Konoha civilian died during this raid. In their place, Konoha ninja had made perfect clones that would act out their normal everyday lives, leaving Naruto no soul presence to detect in any of the civilians, meaning the only soul presence he could see were the invading ninjas. Naruto immediately locked onto his enemy, they had split out strategically throughout the village, much to his annoyance. This would take time and patience that he couldn't afford right now. He had a Chunin exam to deal with. Certain chakras made themselves known, the color depicted them as evil, so he wouldn't spare their lives, while others were neutral soul colors, meaning they were forced to do this, which was understandable. Those people he would spare. An hour had passed, Naruto had used a mixture of soul fist and divine might to kill his opponent silently and to knock others out due to chakra fatigue. He was sweating a little, not because of overexcretion, but because it was a hot day and straining yourself into dark crevices to sneak up your opponents was a tedious business. Nevertheless, he had tied up the invaders who were neutral and had burnt the ninja with evil souls into nothing. Naruto signaled that he had completed his job, several Anbu squads leaping down to take the tied-up ninja into Anko's care. You know, we could have helped too. It's not like we're not used to assassinating ninjas in the dark too. An Anbu member emotionlessly spoke. Yeah, but if any of you had slipped up the others would have been made aware and would have trashed the place, Naruto said as he smiled back at the Anbu. What do you take us for? We're professional ninja, and utilizing us would have made this entire situation go by much faster, the Anbu spoke with others nodding their heads in agreement. Regardless, I got the job done and there were no friendly casualties or destroyed buildings. And I managed to get survivors for interrogation. Naruto said, a little ticked off that his work went unappreciated. And our point still rests, this would have gone by quicker if we had helped and you got lucky that no one noticed. Chances were highly likely you would have been found out as time ticked on. The Anbu said a little irritably. Naruto made a groaning noise as the situation was annoying him. Whatever, I got the job done. If you need me, I'll be at the Chunin exams. Naruto said as he walked past the Anbu members. The kid's got skill, and plenty of it, but it seems he has trouble relying on others to help him out. Another Anbu member deduced. The others made noises of agreement and shuffled their prisoners into the jail cells. But that kind of approach to battle and assassination, it'll be impossible for him to become an effective HOKAGE. Another said as they remained silent. Oh. Chunin exam arena. The HOKAGE sat on his seat at the highest point in the arena, looking down on the undamaged battlefield and its captive audience who seemed just as pumped for a battle as the combatants. Sarutobi was also made aware of who the Kyubi was and played unaware rather well. The Kyubi sat down next to the HOKAGE with a stern look, playing off the Kyubi's actual characteristics perfectly. Your genin this year look battle-hardened, more so than I'd expect from Chunin hopefuls. The Kyubi said in a grave grisly voice. Sarutobi smiled back, keeping up the innocent act. My, you think so, Sarutobi said as he feigned looking over his ninja to look for any odd or out-of-place characteristic. They seem strong. But I wonder if they can take on Gaara, the Kyubi asked with an almost unnoticeable hint of bloodlust in his voice. Oh, the Jinchuriki, Sarutobi asked, even though he already knew the answer. The Kyubi's face stayed as stern as ever, nodding his head without looking away from the battlefield. We shall have to see, a Jinchuriki's power should never be underestimated. Sarutobi said as he eyed Gaara steadily, analyzing him as best he could. That's interesting, where is your village's Jinchuriki, the Kyubi asked, a little bit of suspicion etched across his usually emotionless face, what you could see of his face anyway. Sarutobi shrugged his shoulders. I haven't a clue, probably training with his teacher. They have a few minutes to spare. Sarutobi spoke as the announcer called out. It appears not. The Kyubi said as the announcer gained everyone's attention. Sarutobi frowned as he wondered if Naruto's plan had worked out or if he'd hit any problems. Welcome ladies and gentlemen to the 13th Konoha Chunin exam stadium battle. This year is no different from the rest, two combatants must face each other in a one-on-one duel. These battles aren't to the death, but death is a possibility, so I would advise any of you who do not wish to witness the death of a person to leave now. The announcer spoke loudly into his mic. No one left their seats, so he assumed it was okay to continue. As I expected, anyway, the match isn't over until one person stops breathing or until one person forfeits. The announcer spoke as everyone sat deathly quiet, not wanting to wait any longer until the fight start. I'd like to remind all contestants that even if you win, you aren't guaranteed Chunin. It is up to your village to decide if you make Chunin or not. Losing does not mean you can't become Chunin either, but winning does help add to your points a little. Chunins are picked under village's own specific criteria. If you meet the required points, then you are promoted. Does everybody understand? The announcer said with the combatants nodding and the onlookers sighing, getting frustrated with this guy already. The first matchup will be Naruto Uzumaki vs Sai. The announcer spoke as Sai jumped to the battlefield, bettors holding their tickets and hoping for a good match. When after a minute Naruto didn't come down, a growing whisper turned into angry boos and chants. The Kazekage was about to suggest a rematch later on, but before he could even move his head the doors to the bottom half of the stadium opened. Naruto walked through what will soon be a battlefield and stopped several feet away from his opponent. The announcer jumped down in between the two combatants, who were eyeing the other up. Naruto made out that Sai had a katana, probably had some sword techniques, had some scrolls, so he probably used sealed weapons during battles. There wasn't much to make out about Sai without using his dijutsus, his poker face was very good. You're Sakura's and Sasuke's teammate. It was more of a statement than a question, Naruto nodded, to which Sai smirked a little. Old teammates, Naruto corrected. How is it to live in Konoha? Sai asked randomly out of the blue. Naruto grew confused until he noticed Sai wore a sound headband. What, he's a Konoha ninja? Did this happen because of us coming back in time and messing certain things up? Wow, changing a few seconds does change a lot, Naruto thought to himself. He and Sai had never really been close and only talked when on missions that required communication to complete objectives. It's not like he disliked Sai, but because Sai was way too quiet and never talked about anything personal. It was hard to trust a guy like that. It's not so bad. It has its ups and downs, Naruto replied. Sai nodded, still fake smiling. The crowd was openly shouting insults now, the talk had gone on far enough and they wanted to see a fight already. Are both combatants ready? Both nodded their heads. Then begin, the announcer spoke, quickly jumping away from the battlegrounds. Naruto, with a speed that was hard to follow, shot out and punched Sai straight in the face, his body impacting with the wall. Naruto created a shadow clone to take his place while his body sank into the earth without anyone but Jounin ninjas noticing. My, this boy is interesting. His speed was incredible and he knows an earth jutsu to top it off. It looks like you prepared them a little too well this year, Sarutobi. The Kazekage said with a little excitement in his voice. Sarutobi ignored the blatant disrespect by calling him by his first name and continued to watch the fight. As the cloud of dust cleared, Sai's body turned to ink and slithered to the floor. Naruto's eyes widened as he witnessed such a skill. An ink clone, when did he have time? Naruto asked himself as he had remembered Sai's entire moveset from memory, but it came to him as a shock that Sai had made an ink clone without him noticing. Suddenly, an ink spear flew out of the ground and missed Naruto, who dodged it by a few centimeters. Naruto did a backflip as he dodged the newly summoned ink wolf swipes. Naruto kicked and punched his way through the pack of wolves, looking out for a hiding place that Sai could be staying in. Naruto, even without his dijutsu, noticed Sai's chakra presence behind a tree. Naruto flew through the crowd of ink wolves and Rasenganed the tree, sending Sai flying through the air before landing on his knees. Sai knelt there, panting heavily, the blast disorientating him and leaving him wounded. It was a good match, Sai, but it's over. Please forfeit. Naruto said as he stared down at Sai, who suddenly smiled and sank into the ground as a clump of ink. Sai felt a sword against his, surprised that Sai was this fast and tactful, as he hadn't been when Naruto had known him. I suggest you take your own advice, Sai said in a fake voice, with his smile still apparent. Naruto chuckled a little, leaving Sai confused and paranoid. Naruto burst out of the ground, eyes closed as he struck his opponent's limbs one by one, closing up his chakra coils until he passed out. Naruto deactivated his dijutsu and opened his eyes, watching his own clone disperse, and Sai's body dropped to the floor. The announcer quickly jumped down, checked Sai's condition and announced Naruto the winner. Many of the crowd grunting or calling out in dissatisfaction in having lost the bet that they had made. Naruto walked back up into the stands, hugging his wives one by one, who checked him all over for cuts and bruises. Hey, I'm fine, I didn't even get touched. Naruto said as he pouted because Hinata kept wiped his face with a tissue. You can never be sure, Ino spoke in a sort of lecturer's voice. Naruto's sweat dropped as they were using this as an excuse to touch him, not that he was really complaining. The Kazekage watched the group interact with a hint of disgust in his expression. As this was Konoha practices, then polygamy for Jinchurikis, the Kazekage asked the Hokage, who laughed a little. Not really, they're all acting on their own accord. The old man said as the Kazekage snorted at that claim. Suddenly a beeping noise went off in the Kazekage's ear that only he could hear. This soon, excellent, I won't have to watch any more of these mundane children's fights. The Kazekage though, as he pulled out his katana and lunged toward the Hokage, only to find himself swung back in place and confined to the chair. Shock and a small amount of dread showed on the Kazekage's face as the chair disabled him using chakra and kept him in place. I was aware all along, Sarutobi said, not even facing him. The Kazekage scowled in response. What do you mean you were aware? The Kazekage spoke in an emotionless, if a little impatient voice. That you are Orochimaru. Sarutobi said, finally looking at the masked man, whose eyes bulged out in surprise. Instead of giving him a response, the snake Sannin tried to wriggle out of his confinements. Nothing can help you now, your evil stops today. Sarutobi said as he pulled out a kunai. Sound 4 Orochimaru shouted in fear, the Hokage's eyes widened as he remembered Naruto telling him about this part. Quickly, Sarutobi jumped off the stadium's highest section and onto its walls. As he did so, a purple barrier went up around the area. Naruto jumped up as soon as he saw what had happened, the crowd was knocked out by the sound Kunoichi's flute jutsu. Only the Jounin, Hokage, Naruto and his wives remained conscious. What the is this, didn't I kill Orochimaru a few days ago, Naruto thought as he stared wide-eyed at the stand. Naruto's wives remained with Hinata, as per instructed by Naruto. He should have an idea by now that his forces have been depleted, so he should try to retreat. I suggest having all Anbu and Jounin block off all passageways and rooftops. Naruto advised, watching the purple barrier. Thoughts on how he was still alive confused him greatly. Oh. Meanwhile, Orochimaru was freed of his confines, rubbing his wrists, looking pretty pissed off and confused. What the hell is going on, Taiya? Where are my reinforcements? The aged snake asked the flute-wielding sound Kunoichi elite. I'm not getting a reading from them at all, the connection is either severed or they have been compromised. Taiya said, instantly getting backhanded by the angered Sannin. Well, find a way to communicate with them, Orochimaru said as Taiya's teammates laughed at her abuse. Using her bruise and continually sending communication requests to the squad's commander. There's no use, no one's picking up at all. Taiya spoke as she awaited another strike. Orochimaru was in mid-swing until he stopped. Sir, there's no time for this, you can discipline her when we get back to our village, but for the time being we need an escape plan. The longer we sit here talking, the more time they have to spread out and think up a plan. Jirobo spoke as Orochimaru calmed down. Good point. Drop the barrier, get in an X formation, and head towards the south gate. Orochimaru spoke as the group nodded and, with a quickness that shocked most people, the group dropped the barrier and headed towards the south gate. Naruto and Sarutobi were instantly on their tail, the Jounin blocked off all directions the group could go, so they made a defensive perimeter on a group of houses connected to each other. Orochimaru turned around and the surprise that greeted him was insane, everything made sense now, but at the same time, confused him even more. Orochimaru was actually Kabuto. He's absorbed Orochimaru so soon, I did not expect this at all. Naruto whispered to Sarutobi, who nodded. Kabuto looked just like Orochimaru, except he had glasses on, and his facial curves were more Kabuto-like. Ah, the young leaf Jinchuriki. What a wonderful surprise, I'm sorry, but I can't stay long to chat. Kabuto spoke in an overly calm voice. Sound 4, Plan E if you will. Kabuto smirked, the group stood there, shocked with what was requested of them. But Lord Orochimaru was cut off with another slap. Plan E, Sound 4, Kabuto bellowed, the group flinched and put up a barrier. Naruto frowned but then gasped as Kabuto's body vanished out of sight. The barrier dropped and the group was now down to 4 members, who looked very drained of chakra. Taiya collapsed to her knees, to which her teammates grunted at. "You worthless slut, stop being so weak," Jirobo said as he kicked the Kunoichi off the roof and onto the street below. Blood coming out her mouth. A group of Jounin quickly secured her and tied her up. Naruto took this distraction to take out Jirobo, activating his Ijinigan, and swiped the plump elite sound ninja with a fistful of black flames. Taking the situation to his advantage, Naruto activated his Hell Torment Jutsu and looked the 2 remaining ninja in the eyes, causing them to go into a deep torture Jinjutsu, much like the Sharingans. Naruto jumped back as the Anbu group secured the ninja, Jirobo dying because he couldn't stop the black flames from spreading. What you did was reckless, Naruto, but it worked and you clearly analyzed the situation well. So good job, Sarutobi spoke as he cracked his back. Damn this back of mine. Sarutobi chuckled. Naruto smiled, nothing more need be said, so he walked back to the arena. As he and the Hokage approached the arena, they heard the commotion that was going off within. The 2 hurried into the arena. Most of the arena's people had left, only a few clans and Konoha families remained. When they noticed Sarutobi, they crowded around him. Hokage-sama, because of the recent attack, the clans from the other villages feared for their lives and ran away. The councils from all the contesting villages agreed on cancelling this year's exam. The announcer spoke as the Hokage sighed, looking over the disappointed and frustrated faces of the combatants. I am sorry for this interruption and this inconvenience, you'll have to return to your home villages. Sarutobi spoke as the grumbling ninja got back into their 4-man cells and walked out of the stadium. This is so bullshit, one of the ninjas spoke as they left. What about us, Hokage-sama? Tenten asked Sarutobi, who smiled a little nervously. Well, the truth is you were all going to get Chunin status anyway, we only asked you to join this year's exam because it made Konoha's image remain stronger than the other villages, Sarutobi said, rubbing his head in an embarrassed way. A few of the girls looked a little ticked off but understood it was for Konoha's sake, so they didn't mind as much. Well, I guess that's okay, so we're all Chunin rank now, Shion asked. The rest of the group listening carefully and hopefully. Naruto and all his wives are, that includes you Hinata, but I'm afraid Naruto's family will have to take a resit of the final exam in a few weeks' time. The HOKAGE said as Naruto's family groaned in annoyance. Why me? Arashi asked loudly, the others couldn't help but feel his frustration. The day's events had been long and tedious for Naruto, but he could relax knowing it was all over for him, now he could relax and figure out a training plan. He sighed happily as he turned around in bed, he had decided to go to bed earlier than usual so he could get a fresh start in the morning. He could hear laughter and playful banter going on downstairs, which made him smile at the thought of everyone getting along better together. Naruto turned around once more and was face to face with Anko, who slyly grinned at him, proud of her sneaking skills. Hey there, she spoke, cuddling into him. Naruto smirked, not so surprised because he was getting used to this sort of thing. Hey yourself. Naruto responded, embracing her innocently, the two of them falling asleep soon after. Oh. Thanks for watching my video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment below your favorite part. Don't forget to support author and his story, link in the description. Sayonara, see you in the next video.